morning. So I'm Councillor Friesen chairing here. We've got Councillors Palat and Clayton who are also on the Community Services Committee, and Mayor Given is a member of all committees. So we're going to begin with the Director's Service Area Update. That's Director Miller.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I'll start off with Community Knowledge Campus and Eastlink Centre. So just to let committee know that today is the day that we're increasing the amenities at the site. And part of the process is we have our guest services team contacting and informing all our guests that own memberships about the increased amenities, as well as processing requests for membership holds and cancellations as well. During the week of September 28th to the October 3rd, we averaged 52% of capacity for all available bookable space. So it's 312 hours of user group bookings as well in aquatics and 50 plus in the field house. We also had a time trial for both the Piranhas and the Masters on the afternoon of Saturday, October 3rd at the facility. With events and entertainment at MCC, we, committee or council was aware that AHS was using the underground parking for a period of time for COVID testing. So they've now moved on to a permanent site, which is the old Service Credit Union on the north end of the city. But they wanted to say thank you very much to the city for the accommodation that we made for them for using our site. It was very helpful. And with Revolution Place, the painting is now underway in the lobby. I stopped by a couple days ago. It looks very good. They have quite a crew doing the painting, so I'm sure it'll be a nice addition. And then the Storm are hosting 2 exhibition games. The first one was on October 10th. The second is on the 17th. And unfortunately, I guess, or fortunately it could be as well, but it's a limit of 100 spectators per game, which doesn't fill our seats, but it keeps the folks safe, I guess. And then just with the Legion, with the upcoming Remembrance Day, they've decided not to use Revolution Place, which they historically do, but the Legion will be hosting their own modified event instead at their own site, I believe. And then Stepping Stones has now begun operations at Day Bar, which it started on October 5th, and reportedly going well so far. With facilities, they're working with engineering to find a long-term solution to repair and replace the aging and failed lift station. It's a lift station force main line in Muskosipi Park. It's an old historical system we have down there, so we ran into a problem recently where there was a leak, so they're addressing that. And then they're also busy conducting annual inspections of facility rooftop safety systems. For fleet, nothing to report there. Sports development, wellness and culture. The annual Heritage Village Folktale Tour takes place on the 16th and 17th. It's a walking tour of the Heritage Village, accompanied by a tour guide reading mysterious historical stories of the region. And then registration for this preschool program planning, Exploring Montessori, is it was so popular that what we had to do was add a second session, and that begins on November 10th. And then the collection team is in the process of closing and winterizing the Heritage Village and the Reverend Forbes home site as well. Some good news, the leisure center is almost booked to capacity. We still do have space on Sundays, but lots of activity going on there. And then the seasonal washrooms are now closed for the winter at Crystal Lake, Lions Parks, at the Sandy Dump, as well as the beach volleyball site. And then for transit, accessible transit began Sunday service on October 4th. And just some update on the ridership. So accessible transit ridership for September was at 22% of pre-COVID levels, and for public transit it was at about 50% of pre-COVID. And then for November 13th, the transit hours will be extended until 11 p.m. for Vegas night. And that's my update, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director Miller. Are there any questions? I just have one. You mentioned the Legion won't be doing the big Revolution Place event. Any word on the Anavets with their outdoor event?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Sorry, I don't have information, but I could find out if you want.
Okay. Yeah, that's the Cenotaph one being outdoors. I'm just not sure if the...
Okay.
Yeah, if you could, that'd be great.
Sure. Okay, and I'll distribute that.
Thank you. Thanks. All right. With that, we will hear from Candace Bilodeau. So there's been the public engagement sessions regarding Revolution Place revitalization, and I see that you're on there. Ms. Bilodeau, go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair Friesen. So I do have a presentation here that I'm going to just try to share. Just one moment. Sorry, I'm just going to try that one more time. Can you confirm if that is working? Are you able to see the presentation?
No, we can't.
Okay. Just one moment while I troubleshoot. Sorry about this.
That's all right. Oh, there we go. There, we've got it now, Ms. Bilodeau. Thank you.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So this report is being presented today to deliver the results gathered by administration during public consultation for the proposed Revolution Place renovation. This presentation will consist of 2 stages where I will provide an initial review.
Pardon me, Ms. Bilodeau, sorry, it's just not advancing. I'm not sure if you're, so it's just in the, you need to do the start presentation.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's not showing you.
Yeah, it was on the presentation screen, but with the slides to the left.
Oh, okay.
And there was no advancement.
Yes, I can. I'm just going to try this instead. Does that work?
Nope, now we've lost the view of your screen completely.
Oh dear. Would you mind if I just advance on this screen?
That's fine as long as the advancing was working. I'm just not sure if it was. Were you still on the title
no
page?
worries.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It wasn't here. I can also just email it to Shane. If you just bear with me just for one moment.
Thank you. Sure. I appreciate everyone's patience with this. It's we're not in an ideal capacity here, but with everyone's patience and understanding, it's very helpful. And I have a feeling that Ms. Bilodeau is experiencing the same stress I do when I have to bag my own groceries and there's someone right behind me in the line. That's, to me, ultimate stress.
I appreciate your patience. Just one moment.
No trouble.
Okay, so I sent it over to, there we go. Perfect, thank you.
There we have it. Perfect. Thank you very much, Ms. Village.
Okay, so this presentation will consist of 2 stages where I will provide an initial review of the engagement tactics used and what results, and then forum research, the third-party polling firm secured to conduct a telephone survey will then provide insight into the overall findings. As the feedback gathered from the various city-conducted engagement tactics largely coincides with that gathered by forums, we will be touching on the results only once, and we'll use forum findings as the general overview. The variations that were seen between the 2 data sets did not apply to any of the primary responses, but in some cases altered the ranking that follows. These have all been captured in the administrative report, but should there be any questions following the presentation, I would be happy to speak to those variations. There is a lot of data to go through, but we want to ensure to provide council the details with as much time for consideration as possible. All findings will then be provided in official reports housed on the online engagement page located at engage.cityofgp.com. Shane, can you change slide, please? Engagement projects of this scale would typically have a longer public consultation component, but due to the restricted timeframe, administration proceeded with a range of feedback tools to gather information that would be most relevant to options council will be considering during budget deliberations. These tools sought feedback on the established themes of usage of space, features, funding, and support for or against the options. Administration also used this opportunity to capitalize on gathering valuable insight to help identify and develop programming, events, and business opportunities for Revolution Place, which will be of use to administration moving forward. Change slide. All of these feedback mechanisms were preceded by a public awareness campaign with the intention of increasing awareness and understanding of the project across various demographics. In order to achieve this, administration deployed a print and online media campaign using paid, earned, partner, and own media channels, methods that were maintained throughout the engagement process. Change slide, please. These methods can be seen in the utilization of traditional print media through advertisements posted in the Daily Herald Tribune, as well as the distribution of a one-pager on the project, distributed to key stakeholder groups for posting and circulating to their members at their discretion. Change slide. These methods can also be seen in the various digital media campaigns through owned social media channels such as Facebook and Instagram, as well as paid digital geo-targeted campaign networks. Change slide. Innovative methods were also tapped into to reach a wider audience and encourage participation, as can be seen through the implementation of Instagram Stories, a relatively new tool in the efforts to bolster engagement participation. Change slide, please. As a result of the information campaign and ongoing promotion of the engagement opportunities, coupled with a marked interest in the topics in the community, participation in the city-conducted engagement was higher than our typical engagements to date. The online public survey resulted in a total of 209 responses from participants aged 15 and older, largely from residents of Grande Prairie, but also inclusive of residents within the county and the surrounding region. Change slide. The targeted stakeholder survey, distributed to 8 identified stakeholder groups, resulted in 53 responses in total. Change slide. And lastly, the multi-day open house resulted in 26 attendees. Through feedback mechanisms such as card storming, dot voting, and ballot submission, participants were able to respond to basic questions, provide feedback, and vote on their preferred option. All feedback gathered through these various city-conducted engagements were compiled to result in the findings presented in the administrative report. However, separate reports outlining contributions from each phase of engagement will be made available on the online engagement platform as well. I will now turn it over to Forum Research Group to outline their process and the overall findings which, as previously mentioned, largely mirror the findings of the city conducted engagement. The representatives we have presenting today on behalf of Forum are William Shatton, Winston Stepp, and Andrew Zhao. William?
Great, thank you, Candace. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Okay, great. So we also just have a short presentation that we'd like to walk you through. So I think my colleague Andrew is going to try and share that. There we go, perfect.
Yeah, we can see it, thanks.
All right, great. So as Candace mentioned, Forum Research was hired to survey the general public around how they felt about the Revolution Place revitalization strategy. And today we're going to present the results of our research. On to the next slide. Thank you. So we did a random digit dial telephone survey of residents of Grande Prairie and the surrounding regions. The survey was in field mid to late September of this year. We surveyed just over 225 individuals, and the results of the survey are accurate, plus or minus 6.5%. So this is a sufficient sample size to get a very high-level overview of how your residents feel about a particular topic. It's great for doing a kind of a pulse check of your population. However, it doesn't really allow us to do deep dives into the data. So if you have any questions about specific like age categories or anything like that, the sample size doesn't allow us to dive deep into the data in that regard. However, we are able to do kind of larger, like broader cuts. So you'll see when we go through our analysis, one of the primary kind of cuts that we did onto the analysis framework was comparing residents of the city of Grande Prairie versus the other areas. So that's the county of Grande Prairie, as well as the Peace region. So we kind of divide the data by those categories, and there's some interesting kind of nuances that come out in the results. So if you can move this forward one more slide, please, Andrew. Okay. So now we're going to get into the results, and I'm going to pass it over to my colleague to kind of walk us through some of the key findings here.
All right, great. Thank you, Will. So yeah, just before we start with the findings, I know we're on a bit of a tight schedule, so like Will said, I'll try to keep it fairly high level, but our team's happy to answer any questions you might have at the end of the presentation. And so just a note about the order in which we'll be presenting the findings. So first I'll just touch on the support for various project options. Then I'll move on to some concerns and issues surrounding potential renovation, and finally some findings that are a bit more forward-looking. So what we see on this first slide here is which of the project options respondents most prefer when they're presented with the details of the three options and asked to choose one. So it's broken out by region, like Will mentioned, with the city of Grande Prairie in green and surrounding areas in blue. And so what this shows is that respondents, whether they live in the city or in surrounding areas, tend to prefer option 3, which is the full-scale renovation, over the other options. Option 1, addressing immediate needs, is a pretty close second among city respondents, and option 2 receives by far the least support from people who live in the city. So moving on to the next slide, this next slide shows a follow-up question that we asked to gauge support for option 3 independent of the other options. So respondents were asked to rate their support for full-scale renovation on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all supportive, so that's dark red there, and 10 being extremely supportive, which is in the dark green. So the net supportive number that you also see on the right is the percentage of respondents who rated their support as a 6 or greater. So we're counting that as they support the renovation. So this figure is also broken out by region, with City of Grande Prairie on top and surrounding areas on the bottom. So as you can see, 2/3 of city respondents, 66%, say they're supportive of a full-scale renovation, and a quarter say they're extremely supportive. So that shows a strong enthusiasm for a full-scale renovation among city residents. Now, what this 2/3 number tells us is that even if option 3 isn't everyone's first choice, maybe some people said in the previous question that they would choose a partial scale over a full-scale renovation, the takeaway is still that respondents who live in the city are still generally supportive of option 3, and 2/3 represents pretty widespread support. And one of the other interesting findings from this section of the report is that those who most enjoy attending concerts at Revolution Place are far more supportive of a full-scale renovation than those who say they enjoy attending hockey. And so 2/3 of concert goers said they support in this question, as opposed to only 1/2 of those who attend hockey. And so that'll be one of the recurring themes of our presentation today, that concert goers are more in favor of a full-scale renovation, and that's tied to seating and making the venue more competitive when it comes to attracting musicians and entertainers to Grande Prairie. I'll touch on that a little bit in this next slide here. So this slide shows what respondents say when we ask them what's top of mind when considering a full-scale renovation. So this is an open-ended question, which means that respondents were not read any of the options, they just told us whatever was on their mind. And this is also a multi-mention question, which means respondents can give multiple answers, as many as they want. So the dark green represents the first response that they gave, and the light green represents the second. So like I highlighted on the last slide, concerts and entertainment are obviously the top two things that respondents mentioned here. So this is an important finding that we feel that council should be aware of. Concerts and entertainment are top priorities for respondents, and Revolution Place is seen as an important venue for arts and culture in Grande Prairie. And this comes up again and again throughout the report and appears to be driving support for a full-scale renovation. So on the other hand, we see that the third and fourth top-of-mind issues are about fiscal responsibility, which brings me to concerns that residents have about a full-scale renovation. So this figure shows a question that we only asked respondents who rated their support a 5 or below for a full-scale renovation. So that means they don't support a full-scale renovation and they clearly have some concerns. And so for the vast majority of these non-supporters, they're concerned about the affordability of a full-scale renovation, which is the top option here by far. So now the takeaway from this slide isn't that everyone thinks a full-scale renovation is too expensive. Like I said, this slide shows only a segment of the population, so those that don't support option 3. So the key takeaway instead should be that residents see value in a full-scale renovation, but there is also a recognition that there's a need to be fiscally responsible. So next I'll just turn to a couple of slides that are a bit more forward-looking. So this first slide here provides potential suggestions for future programming at Revolution Place and shows what respondents said when we asked what they would most like to see more of at Revolution Place. So once again, this is an open-ended, multi-mention question, meaning respondents are not read any of the options and they can give as many responses as they'd like. And the main takeaway here is that concerts are the most in-demand event at Revolution Place. 7 in 10 respondents said they want to see more concerts. And this finding once again reiterates the importance of arts and culture events in Grande Prairie and Revolution Place's key role as a venue for those events. This next slide is another open-ended multi-mention question. And here we asked respondents which new user features they'd most like to see in a renovation. So seating topped the list, which makes sense because the same people who are going to Revolution Place for concerts are those who want more seating so that the venue can attract more artists to Grande Prairie. And other highly desired features include more washrooms, more parking, more social gathering spaces, etc. This next slide shows a series of questions that we ask respondents, where we ask them to rate from 1 to 10 how important they think various proposed improvements to the venue are. And so the numbers on the right, which you've seen before, are the percentage of respondents who rated an improvement 6 or above. That is, that they think that improvement is important. So the takeaway here is, once again, that seating is a top priority for respondents. The two improvements that top our list in terms of net importance here are increasing seating to 5,000 and filling in the east and west ends of the arena with an upper bowl concourse that would add more seats in those areas. So once again, this makes sense if we remember that concerts and entertainment options are the top priorities for respondents. And finally, that brings us to our last slide, which is about how respondents think all this should be paid for if council does go forward with renovation. So this slide is broken out by region, like we've seen before. And the top funding option that respondents prefer are regional partnerships with, for example, the County of Grande Prairie or the Municipal District of Greenview. After that, the most popular options are all costs that are potentially levied on users of the venue as opposed to the general population, so higher ticket prices, higher user fees, etc. And one interesting finding that we have here is that while respondents from surrounding areas are highly in favor of paid parking, city respondents are not. And perhaps that's because they already deal with parking restrictions and fees while parking in the city and aren't in favor of adding any more. And finally, the most unpopular options are tax increases or debt servicing. So these are costs that would be incurred by all taxpayers as opposed to just users of the venue. That brings us to the end of our presentation. Thank you for your time and attention this morning, and our team's now happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for either forum group or Ms. Bilodeau? I see Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you. My question is for the forum group. So I've got a question that I'll have a follow-up, but what were people told in terms of the cost of this facility? Were they told the total price tag? Were they told the property tax impact that would have? Just what were they told in terms of the financial aspect of this facility?
Yep, that's a great question. I can pull up the questionnaire really quickly and let you know. Just give me one second.
And then if you have to look through the questionnaire anyways, just so you know what my follow-up question is going to be is, at what point were they told that? Were they told that before or after they were asked if they support this project?
They were told at the very beginning, so right before the very first question, where they were asked to choose the 3 different options.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair Friesen. Same question, down the same sort of path, question for the facilitator of the questioning. Was there any discussion? I mean, I know the questions have to be pretty basic. I'm curious why people think they want more seats or why they want the ends filled in. So was there any questions that would sort of indicate to provide us information of, do people just think it's great that we have a facility with seats in both ends? Do people think we need more seats? Was there any questions that sort of would help us in consideration of the why people think we need a bigger arena?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, some of the one of the recurring themes throughout our report is this focus on concerts and entertainment options. And some of the questions when they were framing option 3 did have a bit of a suggestion that more seating would make the venue more competitive for attracting new artists or kind of other entertainers to the city. And so that kind of throughout our report seems to be what's driving the support for a full-scale renovation, which respondents were told at the beginning of the questionnaire includes increasing the seats to 5,000 and adding that upper bowl concourse with more seating.
Thank you. Any further information available? And okay, so while we're waiting still, I've got Councillor Platt and then Mayor Given.
Thanks, Chair Friesen. Just a question on the site location. I believe it was pretty specific, that was Revolution Place only. Was there any questions around potential other sites, or was this specifically only to Revolution Place being replaced downtown?
Yeah, oh, sorry, Candace, do you want to take it?
Yeah, I did see Ms. Bilodeau to answer, and then if there's any follow-up, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Friesen. So there had been, on some questions, the indication of the potential, not the potential, but part of the reasoning being for a new bill. So if there were concerns or if there was reasons for not supporting, the availability of providing the answer for a new bill was made available to them. However, this engagement did largely focus singularly on Revolution Place as the options that were presented.
So there was no question saying, I'd like a new build, downtown's option 1, potential options number 2, but it was just basically for downtown.
Yes, that's correct. Now there were, as mentioned, there were those opportunities to indicate preference for a new build, but no indication for what that location might be.
Thank you. Any further questions? And were we still waiting for information regarding Councillor Bressie's?
So I have that information.
Okay, let's go ahead then, Andrew. Or was that?
Yeah. So this is William Shen.
Oh, sorry, William. Okay.
Introduction. Yeah, no
Thank
problem.
you. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so we presented three options like Andrew just went through in the presentation, and the price, the budget that we provided response. This was at the very beginning of the survey, so it was provided up front. So option one, which was addressing immediate needs, we provided them a budget of $544,000. Option two, which was addressing immediate needs plus a design build, a budget of approximately $4 million. Option three, which was the most popular, was a full-scale renovation at a budget of $55 million.
Great.
And Councillor Bressie has follow-up. Go ahead.
Great. And so that was the only information given to them. They weren't given tax impact or how that would break down in amortization. They're just told the total budget. Am I understand that correct?
Correctly. Yeah. Yes. And that was it. Just total budget.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Are there any further questions or discussion on this? Great. Oh. Okay. Mayor Given has a question for administration. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I guess actually discussion, appreciate the gathering of information that helps inform council decision making, gives us something to think about as we head into budget. I guess now would be the point if there's additional detail or additional context or, Councillor Bressie was asking some questions about the tax impact and those sort of things. Now would probably be the time for us to identify those for administration so that they can prepare it in advance of budget. So there's, for me, I'd be interested in, well, what's the what is the actual impact per average homeowner, on an annual basis or a monthly basis of the different options? What is the actual property tax impact of the debt servicing, or if council is going to consider that? So those are the kinds of pieces that I'd like to know that we're going to have available in advance of budget so we can consider them and talk with people about them. So what was administration's plan for providing any additional information to council, or what could council expect by way of new information before budget?
All right, and I think that will be Director Bork.
Thank you, Chair Friesen. If there are pieces of information that council would like, either giving it to us now or sending it to us in advance, we can prepare all of that information and share that with all of council. But if there are specifics, please do let us know.
So by way of doing that, ones that I'd be interested in are obviously the total cost. It's a big sticker for anybody. I'd like to understand what administration would recommend for amortization of any debt servicing. I'd like to understand what administration would recommend for strategies of debt servicing versus cash, if any. And I'd like to understand what the annual cost per household would be for as a result of the large-scale renovation.
Thank you, Mayor Given. And I'm just going to jump in and add a couple of things as well. I'd like to also understand the projected financial benefits of doing the full-scale reno, and how that offsets the cost over what period of time, and that sort of thing. As well, there was one more thing that will come to mind in the meantime. I think I have Councillor Clayton and then Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Chair Friesen. Just following up on the question you asked, specifically, I want to know how much more annually the city is going to have to contribute to this facility once the facility, if it was done, executed with the $55 million renovation, what that looks like. We know our contribution right now to the facility, but with a larger facility and speculation that will generate more revenue, what does the cost look like to run that facility going forward with it being a much larger scale facility? Thanks.
Thanks, Chair Friesen. Yeah, just on that, I definitely would like to know some more information around the economic impact. A couple other questions though I have is what's the plan, or if there's going to be another plan around parking? We're going to add 2,000 potential seats in this area, but I don't see any addition about parking was about facility. So if administration can maybe just tell me what our plan is around that. And then also I will be asking what the site size currently is. We had a proponent in here last week to talk about site sizes of these, and I think they drove a little bit of a point home to me that I'm worried that the site isn't big enough to think what we want to have happen on it. So site size would be important for me. And also what administration's plan is for the storm and for concerts and user groups that use that facility for the 1 to potentially 3 years that they don't have a home, as we will be demolishing a building and replacing it. So I'm just kind of curious how we get ahead of that as far as the user groups that are constantly using this and some of the events that are in it. So those would be my questions, I guess, that I'd like to have answered at budget, please.
Thank you. So my other one was okay. I'm chair now, Mayor Given. Relax. What remaining or outstanding debt do we still carry, and what are the costs of, say, the previous 20 years worth of investments of similar or large-scale facilities? So, what's remaining on Eastlink, for example, or any other large-scale renos that we've done? That was a question that came to me from a resident, and I'd like to be able to answer that. Mayor Given?
Yeah, thanks. That was my, I also wanted to ask. Sound. So one thing that would be important, I think, as we're comparing this facility to new facilities or like facilities around the question of parking would be parking availability within a radius. So I don't know, I don't know at Rogers Place how much parking is available within how far a walk, or Red Deer's facility or like facilities, how far a walk you have. How many? And I don't know what administration would recommend for how to analyze that. I know our downtown folks have a good sense of how much parking is in the downtown area. I'd like a sense of whether that parking is actually any further away than you might have to walk if you were at a comparable facility in another community.
Thank you. And I would maybe just add to that potential other ways of managing crowds that come, shuttles from another space for parking or that sort of thing. Councillor Bessy?
Thank you. Showing my hand a little bit about where I'd like to go with this, but I'd love to know if council decided not to go ahead with this right now, but to make it a ballot question in the next election, would that just have marginal increased costs on our election, or would that be a significant cost to us? So that's a question I'll be asking.
All right, thank you. And I'm not seeing any other hands. So with that, I think we'll look for perhaps a motion to accept for information. Councillor Platt?
Thanks, Chair Friesen. If there is no other questions, I guess I'd make a motion that administration recommends that committee receive the Revolution Place Revitalization Public Engagement Results Report for information.
Thank you. And any discussion or debate on that? And all in favor? So that passes unanimously with Councillors Clayton, Mayor Given, myself, and Councillor Platt. Now bear with me as I've been kicked off of. There we go. All right, thank you. We now have a report, a recommendation on a potential activity reception center, and I believe Ms. Cajolet, you'll start with that.
Thank you, Chair Friesen. So the proposal for the activity reception center is to provide inclusive, affordable.
I'm just checking, is your mic on or nearby? Thank you.
Is this better?
Thank you.
Okay. The proposal for the Recreation Activity Center and Reception Center is to provide inclusive, affordable, and accessible recreation opportunities for the community. So preliminarily, plans could be for a 20,000 square foot building, potential dimensions of approximately 80 by 250. Administration would propose an operating model similar to the used at the leisure center or community gyms. And the activities to be used in that space are yet to be determined.
She got up at around 9. She's been out twice.
Clyde, just, there we go.
So as outlined in the administrative report, 13 sites were identified that could accommodate an indoor recreation facility. So these sites were reviewed in conjunction with planning and development and engineering. For various reasons, a number of sites were not recommended. So some due to current use by schools or future planning for school sites, and then others due to cost or time constraints for funding and servicing. So 2 sites were established, recommended for future consideration. The first one being in Crystal Ridge. That area that identified in the report is currently zoned as a municipal park. So there's lots of future plans for trails and landscaping in that area. It also has wetlands and is a swan habitat due to the fact that it would require clearing of significant trees in order to construct the facility. This was a location that is not recommended by administration. The second site is that in Cobblestone East. So one of the benefits of this location is that the land is intended for recreation use. So the neighbors who purchased homes in that area would certainly be potentially expecting that the site could be used for a recreation facility. So off-site servicing is complete in this area, so there are services to the roadway. This location is also on a transit route that stops fairly close to where the location of the proposed building would be, and this is the recommended site from administration. So this is what that site could look like. So the activity or recreation center being in sort of the northwest corner of the lot, parking lot there, would leave some additional green space for future activities. So whether that was another facility or some type of sports field to be determined. I know there was some conversation from members about potentially using some of the fill from the recreation building and construction to create some other recreation uses for children and youth in that area. So you can see that identified on the map as certainly a possibility. So the procurement model that is identified in the administrative report is one that would be our typical kind of procurement process. For this project, because of the time constraints, we would recommend an integrated project delivery model. So that would be a design and build together. So we're certainly well underway in determining the scope of work to be done. So with this integrated project proposal, the hope would be once a site is established that we would issue the request for proposal by the end of October and then possibly award the project by the end of November. So this picture that you can see in this slide is a new facility, fairly new facility from built in Lloydminster. So it is similar size to what we're proposing, and this one is approximately 23,000 square feet. It is a steel fabric building, and this one took approximately 13 months start to finish to complete. So for stakeholder engagement, certainly we would work with the communications team and recommend an online engagement for education and awareness for residents. We would also include public survey, quick polls, and stakeholder discussions regarding the activities and the use of the space. Definitely, we would recommend targeted consultation with the Grande Prairie Regional Recreation Committee, the appropriate school district if there's a school in close proximity to the approved site, and then the neighborhood association for the neighborhood that the facility will be in. So there are a number of building options or design options, I guess. So for recreation purposes, we would be looking at a Group A Division 2 commercial build. So that could be a pole type, shed type building. We could look at a pre-engineered building similar to the indoor soccer pitch, some type of steel fabric building, which is similar to the build that was conducted in Lloydminster. And Alternatively, another option could certainly be a steel structure with concrete block walls. So for next steps, obviously site approval is important. There is definitely some additional planning required to further define the scope, and that will, both of those could potentially determine the timing of the project. And then the final step before we get too far along would be to determine the use of the facility, so the type of activities that will be used in the building, and then also the operational model. So the recommendation is that committee recommends council approve the Cobblestone East site for the activity reception center being proposed.
Thank you. And I think Director Miller wanted to just follow up with a summary.
Thanks, Chair Friesen. So just a couple of things I wanted to comment on before council enters into the discussion, or committee does. So just to remind committee that this project came to us just a few months ago, and it's a very exciting project, but it's a significant project as well, a $4 million build. So at this point, we don't have any firm site established. And I guess what I'm trying to do is outline the risks a bit to committee, and I know you're all aware of it, but I feel it's incumbent on myself just to say, here's where we're at. And ultimately, the decision is that of committee and then council. So we don't have any firm site to date. We have a recommendation before committee. We don't have a firm design as well. We've talked about a few options, and I think they're good options, but no decision on that. And we do have a fairly tight timeline, as committee's aware of, council's aware of, to get it built. And with the grant funding, it is supposed to be in place by the end of 2021. So as Stephanie has mentioned, or Ms. Casually, administration has worked quickly to gather as much information as possible, and we're working on the scope of work already, and we have a timeline mapped out, and we're hopeful we can achieve that. So with the recommendation that she just spoke of, we think it would meet the needs of the community, and it has the highest probability of the project going smoothly in our estimation. As you heard, the Lloydminster project took about 13 months, and a few major differences that I'd like to point out is they had a site identified. They didn't build washrooms or showers with theirs. It was a rec site already, and there was public washrooms. So the building you saw, it's my understanding there's no washrooms, there's no showers, which we need to have in ours. So ours is a little bit more complicated in that regard as well. But theirs still took 13 months. We have about 14 and a half months from today to build ours, to design it, well, to select the site, design it, and do construction. So fairly tight timeline. I also wanted to remind committee, and I think you're aware of this already, but 2021 is going to be a year of many projects throughout the city, many engineering projects, many road projects, and then that cascades into making other departments very busy as well, especially procurement, which we're going to need cooperation of procurement for our project. And then we also need facility management to help us with our project. So every department from this day forward going into 2021 is going to be very busy, anything to do with construction. So at the end of 2021, we'll see many positive results throughout the community, I'm sure. Just a couple more quick things. So fitting this project into with all the rest will be a bit of a challenge, but we think we have a plan. The other thing is, it may be a little bit difficult to find contractors, but I think the sooner we can make a decision on ours and then it goes out to RFP, potentially we could have it out to RFP by the end of the month, end of October, and then they can start looking at it to bid on it. And we've also heard recently that the price of wood, especially treated wood, is it's difficult to find, but the price is increasing almost daily, I think. So again, the sooner we can make a decision on where we're going with this, then the better off we'll be. So the recommendation is to use the Riverstone site, and we did identify other sites, and I know those will probably be discussed as well, but I think with all the information that we have to date, the Riverstone site is our best chance of having a successful project. I know there's been a little bit of talk about maybe other sites, other rec facilities in the future as well. So ideally, this Riverstone site could be the model that we could follow for other sites in the future. So if council decided to build additional in the future. So that's all I wanted to share, Madam Chair, unless there's any questions for me. But then...
Thank you, Director Miller, and thank you, Ms. Cazalet. Questions for administration? I see Mayor Given, and then Councillor Thiessen, and then Councillor Blackburn.
Yeah, Director Miller, so appreciate the recommendation. Council knows how I voted on this at our discussion around allocation of the money. That aside, I fully support the cobblestone site because I think it has the best chance of success. And I think that that's where we need to be heading towards now, is a chance for this to unroll well. But I wanted to ask a little bit about the additional attachment just before the maps about the annual municipal contribution, Director Miller. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it. So there's a line in there of unfunded initial capital cost. And appreciate at this stage it's only an estimate, and we'll have to wait to see what actuals look like, but it looks like there's 1.2 million in unfunded capital costs. Is it administration's recommendation that those be funded through deficit funding, or how will those be handled? And ultimately, I guess the line of 76,000 of principal and interest, does that reflect the payment of that 1.2 million dollars? Yeah. So can somebody just sort of walk us through the attached capital and operating sort of proposal?
Thanks, Mary Ann. I think I'll ask Ms. Cazalet to do that, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So based on the recommended site, that amount is actually the anticipated cost for servicing. So if the Cobblestone East site is selected, the cost would be for servicing would be significantly less. So the intent would be that with some savings elsewhere, we could probably absorb that cost within the existing budget approved for the project. If not, and another location was identified as being the preferred location, then the plan would be that we would incur debt servicing for that 1.2 for the servicing costs, and the annual finance payments would be the principal and interest for that debt servicing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Friesen. Thanks for that presentation, Ms. Cazalet and Director Miller. I got two questions. The first question that I have is, administration identified, based off the style of construction, if there's a quicker build option?
Thanks, Chair Friesen. So I think my understanding is that the quickest build option would probably be a pole shed. We've heard our research and talking to others, it could be constructed in probably 2 months, put in ground, and then we could start on the interior work as well. So we'd have a shell within 2 months, and then do the mechanical and electrical inside.
Okay, no, that's great. That's good news to hear. Much like the mayor said, I'm also in favor of the Cobblestone East site. My main preference in the beginning was the Smith site, but understanding the complexities with the other construction that's going to be going on in the servicing of the site, I think it might be difficult for us to pull that off before within the timeline that we've been given. But just in regards to that Cobblestone East site on Riverstone, right in front of the Riverstone School, I noticed the road is constantly dipping and sinking and falling in, and we constantly have to fill that. I know a lot of that has to do with packing and grading, but are we going to have to put in any special engineering considerations in regard to the soft soils of the area?
Thanks, Chair Friesen. So I think we actually engaged a geotechnical firm to do some soil testing, and we should have the results early November. And then we'll share that. If we did issue the RFP that quickly, it would just be an addendum to the RFP, so the contractor would know what the soil conditions are, which would help determine what type of build. But,
perfect.
We also reached out to the school district to see if we could if they would share their information, but it's a little bit of a distance away, so we thought we're best to do our own. And the cost was actually fairly reasonable to do it, so we'll have that information for the future.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you. First, I will apologize for my earlier outburst. I had no idea that I wasn't muted. So I am in favor of the Cobblestone East site. I think that's probably the one with the least risk in terms of timing and getting the project done in time. However, despite that, whichever site is chosen, I still see a high degree of risk of not getting the job done on time. And so two questions I have are, one, should we be looking during our budget contemplation in November in having money set aside to cover the entire project if we end up not finishing on time and having the project unfunded by the government? And my second question, I've forgotten my second question. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Councillor Blackburn. I think it'll be Director Bork answering.
I'll let our Chief Financial Officer speak to that.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Whiteway, you're on. Good, thank you.
Thanks, Chair Friesen. So when it comes to the deadline, they have set December 31st, 2021. However, if construction's delayed significantly, maybe at a significant completion portion, I do believe that there will be some level of flexibility in that we could still be applying the funding first before our municipal contribution. We would have other options for funding if it came down to it, but I'd be confident that they would allow us to still submit the project and where it is at for completion for December 31st.
Thank you. I did remember my other question, Councillor Friesen, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
And if sometime soon we were to think that we can't do this on time and it can't be funded properly, are we at risk of losing the opportunity to spend that money on something else since we've already made our submission? Or would there be some flexibility to apply the available funds to something else?
Thank you. And would that be Ms. Whiteway again?
Thank you, Chair Friesen. We don't have too much of the specifics on the ICIP funding from the federal government, but we are confident that if there was need for flexibility, that they would allow us some, and that we could probably move within one of the other criteria for expenditures.
Thank you. And I believe Councillor Bressie had a question.
Yeah, thank you. So I've got a couple questions just about servicing, but first I'll ask about that grant. My understanding is that the reason there's such a tight timeline on that is because it's partly economic stimulus coming out of COVID-19, and so they want the construction done so the stimulus happens in 2021. My understanding is that the priority is not so much in terms of we need a new service in the community by the end of 2021. It's just we don't want to spend the money in 2022, 2023 because that's not stimulating us right now. So what would happen to that grant funding if the building was completely done? We've spent all the money on construction, but we can't occupy the building yet because we're still waiting to service it. So we've spent all the federal money, all that economic activity is already done with it, but we haven't finished spending our money to service the site yet. Is there a feeling that we'd be at risk of losing the grant then if the building was 100% done, but not quite serviced at the end of 2021?
Thank you. And I think Director Miller has a comment here.
Sure. Thanks, Chair Friesen. I see Danielle was also potentially having a comment, but we've had a bit of a discussion about that possibility, and pretty certain that as long as the building is built and we're making efforts to get it serviced, we'd still receive the funding. So I don't think it's a great risk that we would lose it at that point.
Thank you. Ms. Whiteway, did you have anything to add to that?
No, that's Director Miller is absolutely right.
Thank you.
And then if I may continue with that.
Certainly.
So, and then in terms of looking at, I personally really want it on the Smith site, but not if we're at significant risk of losing the money. So I'm trying to understand more what the risks are with the Smith site. Is is the only increased risk with the Smith site versus the Riverstone site just the servicing, or are there other things about that site that make us think Smith might take longer to build than Riverstone?
Thanks, Chair Friesen. I think there's a number of things with Smith, and I know there's been some discussion about Smith in the past. So right now, Smith, we do have, there was a motion made by council to give land at Smith for Grand Spirit. So that could potentially put their plan, disrupt their plan, I guess, for affordable and senior housing. So we'd have to find a different site for Grand Spirit, potentially. The servicing is an issue. It hasn't been approved yet for servicing. I think it's MSI money that, so the money is there for the offsite servicing. If we proceeded in advance of that, then there's a little bit of risk about where we put the building and how it's placed, I guess, and so that the on-site are stubbed off at the right location. A little risk there. We, in talking to engineering, there was another possibility of the old Smith services, but it would require some analysis to decide if that's even feasible or not. You know, Smith, right now I did speak with Mr. Johnson as well, so it would have to be rezoned as well. So it'd be a public hearing for the rezoning is my understanding. And Mr. Johnson is available if we wanted more details on that this morning. But so there's a number of complications with Smith, but you know, Smith could be a future site for a second facility, but
Thank you. One more, Mr. Presley.
Yeah, and then I guess my last question with that in terms of rezoning, and if you don't have it now, that's okay. But I definitely like to know before council, what's the quickest that we could go through a public hearing process and we could get rezoned if council so decided to do that?
And Director Glavin.
Thank you, Chair Friesen. Ballpark would be around 6 weeks from advertisement to a decision.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Councillor Minhas, I believe, had a question.
Thank you, Eunice. My question was related to this. I prefer this side, but I was more leaning to the Smith division, but this need more work on it, and also will delay the project. When you said this 40-month, the project cost, and if you order the prefab steel building, it still will be that long time, or? Actually, board is more expensive than the steel right now, I think.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Lloydminster site was a steel fabric building, and that project took from decision for site to completion about approximately 14 months. So even with a steel or pre-engineered building, I think it certainly would take less time than from the ground up build, but we'll still be looking at a significant time frame to get the project complete.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we do have a motion ready to go on the floor, but Councillor Platt, I'll recognize you for a comment prior to that.
Thanks, Chair Friesen. I just had a couple of questions too, because I guess my heart keeps coming back to the Smith site, and I realize there's some risk there, but I'm curious of how we were planning on giving this to Grand Spirit, letting them use it when there's going to be a lot of people showering, using toilets, using sinks and everything else versus an activity center. Can I just get an idea of how Grand Spirit was possibly going to use this piece of land?
Okay, and I think this is going over to Director Manuel.
Certainly. So in the capital plan for this year, I believe there is funding available for utility upgrades for the Smith lands. What's been described here is that those upgrades will not be complete in a time frame that would permit the rec facility to benefit from them as quickly as it would need to. A couple other things with the Smith lands is I did get a note about those lands a little bit earlier. Let me just bring it up here. So one of the things with the Smith lands is the Smith lands were actually purchased using funds from sold affordable housing units previously. And part of the intent behind council's allocation of those lands was that we divested of affordable housing lands with permission from the province and subsequently used those funds to buy these lands with the intent of placing additional affordable and senior housing on the land. So it is a consideration, and as recently as Friday, I received correspondence from Grande Prairie that confirms their commitment to those lands and their desire to proceed with them. That correspondence will be attached in a future agenda package.
So for me, where I'm struggling with this a lot is we have 14 acres of land that we want to designate for social housing with no amenities near it. And I'm going to keep saying that there's absolutely no amenities near this. So I love that administration did a lot of work on this in front, and I really appreciate that we had a lot of opportunity to talk about this. And I was in support of Riverstone. I much would rather see us put this to Smith. We own 14 acres of land that we can put a rec center in that will add value for these future supportive housing programs that will go there. This would be right in their backyard if we put a seniors facility right next door to them so they could potentially use it. I realize there's risk, but I think we're all familiar with Canolita Key. And I'm confused if a developer can take dirt, raw land, and turn it into residential lots within one construction season, how we can't get servicing onto this site in the same amount of time. So I'm really struggling with that. I appreciate there's risk with it, and I can appreciate administrations being very diligent and saying, hey guys, there is risk, because there is. To me, it's a very acceptable risk. I know there's a lot going on with the city and procurement. I'm not hearing a lot going on with industry next year. I mean, we might see the first year in our history that we don't see a phase go in the ground from a new development. Engineering firms are scrambling to find work outside of the city. And so I'm not sold that we're going to have a big problem with procurement outside of the city's organization next year to get this kind of work done. And for that, I really want to support this going on Smith's site. I think it's doable. I think there is risk, but I think the risk is very minimal considering that we have an entire year, if we said go in a week, to make that site work, to make it work. And if we can do Canolita Key in less than a year, I don't see how we can't figure out how to service this area. And we'll add some serious value to this 14 acres instead of it just being a field around a train track that we're going to put buildings in and say it's going to be great for social housing. So I'm really struggling why we would even consider not putting this there if we're really going to add out value of that land. If it has to go on Riverstone, so be it. But I would sure hope that our council is pushing as hard as we possibly can to make Riverstone the second option.
I'm kind of hearing that this is debate now. So
it's a little bit of debate, but I guess I want to say that I'm not as concerned about the servicing aspect of that. Just my opinion on it. If we're willing to service it for third-party organizations, I think that we could have the timelines to service it internally.
So, and I do hate to cut you off, but I know that there is a motion ready to go on the floor, and what you're saying perhaps is better said there. So, Mayor Given, did you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Friesen. Yeah, certainly people have opinions on this, and so that if we're at that point, then it's good to get something on the table. So I'll move the recommendation as contained in the report. The committee recommend council approve the Cobblestone East site with the legal description as reflected in the motion for the activity reception center. Period. And speaking to that, council was emailed this morning the letter from Grand Spirit Foundation. So that's at least one part of the puzzle. That site, general site concept and layout, while it's adaptable, the site servicing is a bit constrained. And I think the design work has been done reflective of residential development in that area. I appreciate that we probably could squeeze something in there, but I'm not, the site wasn't designed for servicing with this kind of facility in mind. And we heard from administration all the reasons why they believe the Cobblestone East site has the best chance of success. And I would point out that they didn't say that there was zero chance of failure on Cobblestone. The administration is identifying that there's still a significant risk with the Cobblestone site, but that the Cobblestone site provides the best opportunity for success. I think this is a time where council should count their wins and say, hey, we got a really cool rec facility on the way that was not even on the drawing board 4 months ago. And we managed to get a facility that was originally low cost. There's council support for a greater than, a $5 million development now. That's pretty cool. From here, we probably need to let administration take it and run with it if we actually want to see it implemented. I think that it's going to be a great asset to the community. I think it's going to be a great asset to the neighborhood. And I think we need to now step away and let administration run with implementing it and getting it built. And so for all those reasons are why I'm moving the administrative recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I see that Councillor Clayton would like to discuss.
Thanks, Chair Friesen. I won't support this motion for a few reasons, and I appreciate the comments that administration and the mayor have noted. However, I too support the fact that this facility should be in the Smith subdivision. If we're concerned about timing, fair enough. We can get to work together or get to work on this as soon as possible, and I'm confident that we will get it completed. One thing that I remind committee and depending what goes to council is that during the debate and the discussion of this funding, there was concern of funding it at all, but there was still sentiment that people wanted this facility. So if we still truly want this facility and we're concerned about it getting completed, in my opinion, that would mean that this council still wants to support it regardless if we have the funding. The discussion was that if we can get $4 million and not have it paid from regular tax, capital tax funding, then let's try that option. If, unfortunately, for some reason it doesn't get completed on time, council's appetite during those discussions was still to support this facility. So let's put it in the best location that we see for our community. This is an identified area in our community that needs other amenities. It needs to the people, the residents of the Smith area, and even across from Hillside, across 100, need something in their area that they're proud of. And I think that this facility would fill that void perfectly. And I personally am willing to take that risk, so I can't support this motion. Thanks.
Thank you, and I'll just jump in before Councillor Palat here. I will support this motion. I recall a lot of discussion around this being one of many of these kinds of facilities that we would like to put in the city. And it seems to me if we are starting with one, we want the best chance of success for that one so that we can build on that and move into other areas that are also identified as ideal places to put a facility like this. There's a lot going on in Smith in the coming years, and perhaps that's where we choose to put our second facility, but I would really rather see that done in concert with all of the other considerations that are happening for the Smith site. In the meantime, we have Cobblestone that is more ready as a site for this type of development. We have widespread community support for that, which is evidenced by some emails that we've gotten in support of that as the location. Not that there wouldn't be for Smith, but it's simply that we don't need a rezoning on this. There are far fewer hurdles to get through to proceed with the East Cobblestone site than the Smith subdivision, than the Smith site. And I'm with administration on, if we can knock some months off the timeline by not needing any of that preliminary, not needing the level of servicing and work that Smith would require, not needing the rezoning that it would require. Time is of the essence in a build always, and the fewer bumps along the way that we have for this, the flagship of what we hope will be the first of many facilities like this, I would like to see it set up for success. And even with the few risks that Smith has over the East Cobblestone, I'm very happy to throw my support behind the Cobblestone area. So I will support this, and I encourage my colleagues who are keen to do more of these in the future to also set this one up for success. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Friesen. Just a couple questions for administration on this. I'm not sure who this will be for, but It appears this is probably not going to pass, as I'm not going to be supporting as well. And if Councillor Clayton sticks to her word, this will be a 2-2, which doesn't pass. What would be the intent then, or what's the hope today so this can get to council next week if this doesn't pass? Would I be able to make a subsequent motion that would say I'd like to have it on Smith subdivision, and we could debate that? Is that the process we'd go through? Just want to clarify. Okay. And second of all, just another question for administration. Have we talked to Grand Spirit about potentially building this facility downtown? We're about to, with the next phase, will be 45 million in downtown. We constantly talk about how we need buildings downtown. I'm just really curious why we're not trying to work with Grand Spirit on getting a building downtown for seniors instead of in this area.
That'll be Director Manuel.
Certainly. So at this point, we've had no land to identify for Grand Spirit to build downtown. So outside of just speculative conversations, no, we haven't had any serious conversations in that regard. The planning that Grand Spirit's done to date has been based off the motion previously around Smith. So for the last 3 years, that's kind of been their plan.
Okay, so I guess when we're done this debate, I'll be looking at making a subsequent motion specifically around Grand Spirit and downtown. But for me, I can't support this. I keep going back to, I know I'm hearing lots of this. When we build a second facility, let's be honest as a council, we're not building a second facility a mile away from this facility when there's all these other areas in our community. When we choose to put this location in, that's it. We're not going to come back and circle around to Smith and say, hey, we're going to build a second facility in Smith now when there's all these others in the community. So I appreciate this is going to be harder work, and I will do whatever administration. You can call me whenever you need. I will help whatever I can because I know this is putting extra work on you. But just because it's easier doesn't make it's better. And really, this might be the easier decision, and I do want to support administration as much as I can, and I will call in every favor I possibly can to help you guys out with this. But easier doesn't make it better, and this isn't the best location, in my opinion. I think we really, when I look around this room and I can see how many of us hearts are in having it in Smith, it makes me sad that we're having the conversation about Riverstone, and that's why I can't move it forward. I think we're going to regret this decision later on because it was easier today to move forward with it. So I can't support the motion.
Thank you, and I see Councillor Thiessen would like to chime in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Friesen. I would encourage committee members to at least consider the option of Riverstone and the work that's already been put in to set it up in place. Canceling this now and sending administration off to find out like the feasible options that council can digest easily with no risk. And the big risk here for me is really cash. Like this council has been, we worked very hard to reduce our taxes. We've worked very hard to ensure that our rates are low. We've worked very hard to ensure that we're not borrowing that much. So if we stumble on this and we lose the funding for it because we can't open up the ground and start the building construction until 2022, perhaps, or even in the fall of 2021, and we have a quarter of a completed building, that could be a big issue. I get committee's intention here is to sort of slow this down and move it over. But when we're talking about using the public trust, this is a $5 million project right now that we're potentially sloughing off to maybe borrow money or maybe increase our taxes in subsequent years over a preference. Now, when I look at the Riverstone site, of course, it's not my first choice. In fact, it would be my second choice. But I see just as big a need to build something in the Riverstone area that could also benefit that area. There's a bunch of lands that is already subdivided into neighborhoods that could be developed to the east and to the south of the East Cobblestone area. Putting in an activity center there could actually spur on development of those neighborhoods, get developers and home builders to start putting up houses a little bit quicker because now there's even more value to that site. And it's a bit out of the way. Now, as an East Side kid, I never had a problem hopping on my bike and driving up to 84th, Street and going up there through the old farmers' fields. I don't see any kid all the way up to Crystal Park who, if they had to, wouldn't jump on their bike and go to this activity center. And being that it's already connected to a transit route, that's another thing that this site doesn't have currently built in it in the Smith subdivision is access to transit. So it means that kids are going to have less options to get there. And in a lower income neighborhood, it's walk or bike. And if your parents can't drive you and you can't hop on the bus, well, then those are your options at that point. I do see it as spurring on development of the Smithland, and I can understand that argument and creating an activity center, a place for a destination for kids to go to. But I think kids would still go to it if it was set up in the Cobblestone East area. So I'm just asking and requesting that perhaps we could send this to council and allow council as a whole to deliberate this. And also, if Councillor Platt is going to put on a subsequent motion, maybe to detail any plans or obstacles that the Smith subdivision could we could encounter there, and then we can discuss and debate that as council as a whole. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thiessen. Anything further? Yeah, I see Councillor Minhas and then Councillor Clayton again. And then Councillor Bressie.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris, what you spoke out. And I think the committee should move on to this. I don't know if we need the amendment or not, but we should move ahead because the administration already said they will look into the second reaction place to build in Smith. That'll give us time. I'm worried about more timing and the construction, and that facility has to be open, and that place, the cost-wise, I think is less according to administration. So I hope we move ahead and not to hold this project to the bid for the Smith region to get approval, and we delayed about other 2-3 months. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think Councillor Clayton, were you? I'm not sure if your hand had been up there.
Yeah, my hand was up.
Yes.
You know, in regards to timing, regardless of what's decided here today, this is coming back to council in 2 weeks. What I do think with this motion being defeated, and then consideration from committee to support a motion with Smith, is that it gives administration 2 weeks to prepare for Smith. Or sorry, 1 week to prepare for Smith. I know Smith was already under consideration. There has been some work done in looking at Smith. I think that a majority of us here have said that Smith is a preferred site. So get the decision to council, but for discussion, but get the right decision to council for discussion. When the majority of the people around the table want to have Smith, let's get the right discussion at the table in a week. So I still can't support this motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Clayton. And I'm not sure that I've heard the majority the way you've heard the majority. So, but we will see as it progresses. And Councillor Bressie.
Great. Thank you. Just an idea for committee is if you're deadlocked on this, maybe the motion is committee asks council to make a decision on it. Is the motion you pass, but I just hope that you pass something so this gets discussed next council meeting. But it's for me, it's the risks we've heard with Smith in terms of we've dedicated land for Grand Spirit there. Well, we've dedicated a portion of this land for Grand Spirit there, and I really agree with Councillor Plot that this does nothing but enhance the Grand Spirit land. So that's not a reason for me not to consider Smith. The servicing risk doesn't really seem like a risk to me because I'm quite comfortable with if we have to build this building and leave it unoccupied for a few months while we're getting servicing done. I'm quite comfortable with that if that means that we get the building in the right spot. And I really don't think that if we build in Riverstone, I really don't think that this is a good place for the second building because it's only a kilometer away. And so I don't really buy we'll build in Riverstone, we'll buy a second, and we'll build a second one in Smith. I think if we can at all get this done in Smith, this is the place we need to go. And it really is. I think that we talk about kids biking to this place, which I really agree for 3 seasons of the year is a real viable option. But for a longest winter option, I don't see a kid in Smith biking over to Riverstone when it's -30 out when they most need it. And this is a neighborhood where we've got a lot lower income kids. We don't have any nice amenities in it. In Riverstone, at least in the summer, you got an awesome playground for those kids to play in, and a pretty decent school gym. We don't have those amenities in this neighborhood. I just think for so many reasons that Smith is the right place for this, and I really think that we should be pushing to get this in the right place and done on time, not just pushing to get it done on time. So I really hope that committee sends this to council, whatever motion you pass, and I really hope that council says, no, we're going to really stand firm and put this in the right place, not the convenient place.
Thank you. And I think I will call to question. We've had some good discussion, and it seems that we may have to discuss a second motion. So let's call to question the motion that Mayor Given made to proceed to send to council the consideration of putting the activity center in East Cobblestone. All in favor? And that's 2 of 4. And that's Mayor Given and myself in favor. And opposed? And that's Councillors Clayton and Palat. So that motion does not carry. And I think Councillor Palat has a follow-up motion prepared.
Thanks, Councillor Friesen. Yes, I'd like to make a motion that administration bring back a report to the next council meeting outlining all risks with both Riverstone and Smith for the Activity Reception Center for council to make a decision of the site. I feel like one way or another, this is going to be a debate for council. I don't want to have us not have a decision by next Monday. I think by next week when we get together as council, we need to give administration the time. Having said that, I know for me, then the next week, that's going to mean a lot of meetings with engineers because I want to get my head around everything possible. And if I do think there's risk come next Monday, I won't support the Smith site. I will go to the Riverstone site. If I don't think there's risk on that site, then 100% you're going to hear me continue to push for the Smith site. So I hope we can support this to at least have this conversation happen next Monday, so we can have a decision one way or another. And I think our administration's got a lot of the work done now, and I know some councillors had asked questions, but I think as far as the public, they didn't see the questions that we asked. And so I think if we have a report that comes back that shows the potential risks and outlines where this facility could go, I think that's a good exercise for the public to realize why some of us have pivoted our decision today. And so I'll leave it at that, and I'm sure it'll be up for debate.
Thank you, Councillor Platt. So I just want to understand that the motion here then is simply for administration to...
Yeah, I can reread it for the clerk as well if they want, but...
and I'm actually going to have Mayor Given jump in here, please.
So for those council members that want to see this project proceed, my recommendation would be that you just make the motion that administration choose the Smith site. If there's additional information that we wish to have presented at the council meeting, then say that. But if what we want to do is do the Smith site, then make the motion to put it on the Smith site. Like if that's what we're leading to, then just do that. I'll vote for it. We'll get it to council. I'll vote against it at council because I think it's a bad idea. But there's no reason to cause a whole bunch of extra work. Like if there's a feeling that the supportable site is Smith, and that's what the majority of council wants, then just make that motion.
Yeah. I guess for me, Mayor Given, I wanted the report side by side for both because I think it's a good way to make a decision of all the risks for both. This is allowing administration to just concentrate on those 2 sites. We've dropped all the other sites. So at least it lets administration pare down to those 2 sites. So that's why I made the motion the way I made it. If you don't like it, defeat it, I guess you can make a different one. But I want us to have the conversation about these 2 sites specifically. So that's why I worded it that way.
If I may just look to administration, I'd like to ask the question that if the motion simply to bring it to council as a recommendation that it's built on Smith, would you also bring forward the information that Councillor Palat has just requested in that motion? Is that sort of an inherent part of bringing the recommendation forward for Smith? Thank you. Ms. Cageley?
Thank you, Chair Friesen. Yes, we would bring information for both sites.
So we have the motion on the floor for from Councillor Palat that information for both sites be brought forward, and I'm hopeful that we would also have a follow-up recommendation of site. So I'll call to question then this motion.
What the motion actually is.
Oh, yes. Do you? I think I heard. Is it Ms. Garbaszewski? Do you have that?
I was just going to ask.
Or, Ms. Van Beekveld. Thank you. Sorry, what did you need?
I was just wondering if Councillor Plott could read the motion one more time for me, please.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yes.
Administration bring back report to next council meeting outlining all risks with both Riverstone and Smith for Activity Reception Center.
All right, so call to question then the motion as read again. All in favor? So that's Councillors Clayton and Palat, and opposed? It's Mayor Given and myself. So that motion does not pass. And Councillor Clayton, you have a motion for us, I believe.
I'd move that committee recommend council approve the Smith site for the Activity Reception Center.
Thank you.
Speaking to the motion.
Yes, go ahead.
As Mayor Given had noted, if this is a preferred site, let's get it to council for discussion and go from there. Thanks.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this motion? Call to question then. All in favor? And that is unanimous with the 4 members of this committee. Thank you. Thank you. All right, that takes us to other business. I don't believe there is any. So, yes, Councillor Bressie.
Sorry, just one thing that I didn't get a chance to get in before we were debating that motion. I didn't want to talk when we were talking location, but just a thought for administration. Talk about stakeholder groups. I know that the Grande Prairie Regional Recreation Committee was mentioned in one of the key stakeholder groups here, but I noticed the Sport Connection wasn't noticed in one of the main stakeholder groups. And the Regional Recreation Committee, I'm pretty confident that the committee won't actually view this as a regional facility, and I think they definitely should be put in the loop and notified. But this is a center that's really meant to service a neighborhood, not an entire region. So I don't know how important that committee's feedback is to me, but the Sport Connection is very involved with local groups, especially the smaller ones that don't have homes of their own. So I hope that as this is getting developed, the Regional Rec Committee, I don't really care that much about more than notifying them, but I really hope we see a lot of engagement with the Sport Connection as this gets built.
Thank you. I would echo that. There's certainly more finger on the pulse, but I think that Ms. Cajolet had a response. I did see your hand, didn't I? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Friesen. So certainly the Sport Connection is a member of the Regional Recreation Committee, so they have been notified that this project is moving ahead, certainly not that there is a location selected or anything like that. So we would work with the committee in terms of, since it is already approved to build, we would work with that committee to determine the types of activities and things that could be used in the site. And we have a number of other user groups that the Sports Development, Wellness and Culture Department works with already, Sport Connection being one of them, that we would also look at engaging in those conversations.
Thank you. And Councillor Palat?
Thanks, Chair Friesen. I'm going to try another motion just to kind of come back, circle around on this regarding Grand Spirit. And it's going to be to ask administration to work with Grand Spirit to identify any vacant lands that the city owns downtown for a potential home for a new facility. The reason I'm saying that is I think it's imperative that we look at trying to we have a lot of vacant land downtown that the city has control of, and I'd sure like us to start figuring out a way to let Grand Spirit know we'd love to work with them on that land. And maybe they don't realize that we have land downtown that we have available and that would be a workable space, but we certainly have an abundance of land downtown, in my opinion, that we need to be starting to find a way to develop. We're constantly trying to find a way to get residential doors downtown. And again, I'll keep coming back to think about if my father was in a seniors facility and he could be near Co-op in downtown or in the middle of a field by a train track, I'd sure like to have him downtown. So I hope you guys can support that. I'm not asking for a bunch of work here if administration's already working with Grand Spirit. It's more just to have Grand Spirit understand there is options downtown, and maybe our council being okay with having some of the land we have sitting around downtown being allocated for that use. This land's already serviced in many spots, and I think it's a much higher and better use for a seniors facility than potentially that location. So again, it's to ask administration to work with Grand Spirit to identify land that could be available for downtown for a future building site.
Right, so that is the motion on the floor. Any discussion around this motion? Mayor Given?
Yeah, so I guess I appreciate the intent to identify different sites. I think that there are some administrative reports that identify city-owned land citywide that could have met the requirements, I guess, of Grand Spirit. I'm curious for Councillor Palat, what sites are, like specifically what sites are you imagining are available for development?
I guess for me, I would hope that our administration would identify all the land that's vacant downtown that we own that could be used for a facility like this. We have land behind 214 Place, we have land by Revolution Place, we have the Montreal's Cultural Center, We have land by Rotary. We have a lot of land downtown, I guess, Mayor, given my opinion, and I'm just wondering why we're not trying to work with proponents on trying to secure as many buildings in the downtown core as we can, rather than trying to push them out to Smith subdivision. And the reason I say this is I constantly hear how organizations come to us and they say they need land. They need land to be able to build a project. And so we think by having land in Smith that's still not even actually ready, we're finding out it's not serviced and isn't allocated and demised, that's where we're forcing them. So in my opinion, we could quite easily, in the same sort of timelines, try to find them a better home downtown if we're just trying to find land for Grand Spirit. And I think realistically for Grand Spirit, I don't want to be that government agency that finds we have land, so we build things, and then later on say, why did we put it there? And people go, oh, because we had land. And so I think the highest and best use for where seniors' homes should be where seniors should be looking at going. I'm just not sure if Grand Spirit realizes all the potential opportunities the city does have for land other than Smith.
Thank you. Director Manuel.
Yeah, just to narrow down the scope a little bit, does the motion include land with existing activities such as parking facilities? Because that's kind of what I just heard there a second ago, and not just exclusive to vacant land. Because I know on the vacant land side, we are fairly limited in our options.
So I guess my intent was to work with Grand Spirit to find available land. So if we think there's available land in the downtown corridor that could be a great fit for a seniors complex, whether it's parking or vacant, I would hope that administration would try to steer that way with it. That's my intent, is just to really start working with Grand Spirit on what are the best locations, where would you ideally like to be? Because I've spoken, and again, we've all spoke to people, but I don't get the impression this is their ideal location. It's a location that we have land available for them for now.
I'm going to jump in here. It would be helpful for me to just get a refresher from administration on how this land came to be earmarked for Grand Spirit, because my understanding is this is not a new decision, and it's likely as well that Grand Spirit has now put some financial investment into developing on Smith's site. So if I could just get a refresher of how this land was decided upon, that would be helpful for me, and I hope for others. Is that Director Manuel again? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not completely prepared for that, but in short, it looks like the summary I have says the land was purchased using funds from the sale of the Mount View homes with the intent of providing seniors and affordable housing. The land is presently zoned high density residential. And it looks like there was a number of council motions made between 2014 when the land was purchased and 2016, which ultimately directed land allocated to Grand Spirit. Oh, actually, sorry, 2018, February 13th, 2018 is when the last motion, I'm sorry, that was committee. March 12th, 2018 is when the last motion was made by council to endorse allocating a portion of the land within Smith subdivision to Grande Prairie.
Thank you. I think then, speaking to Councillor Palat's motion, I won't support it. The idea that, decision that was made a few years ago with what we knew a few years ago could be shifted now because of other considerations. We could be doing that with every decision we make. When we make a decision, we're doing it with the best information we have at the time, and unless there's a undeniably compelling reason to shift gears 2 years later when an organization has been planning to use this land, I think is, that's pulling the rug from under under organizations, and I'm not prepared to support anything that goes down that rabbit trail. Any other discussion regarding this motion? And yes, Councillor Platt to close.
Thanks, Chair Friesen. I'm not trying to make this hard. I'm just trying to give options to Grand Spirit. And I guess I'll come back to that. I hear that we've worked with them on land, but we're finding out the land's not fully serviced. We don't have an area structure. We don't even know what piece of land they have. So for them to start planning on a piece of land, at some point we'd have had to say, this is your 1.8 acres site size. They'd start planning sites. They'd start planning buildings. I don't think they're at that point. So I don't think we've caused any hardship by giving Grand Spirit. If anything, what I'm hoping is we're giving Grand Spirit more options. If their option comes back and says, you know what, the Smith site is our most preferred site and it makes the most sense, then great. I constantly think this council needs to remind ourselves, if we're not forcing and trying to get things downtown where we have a chance, we've spent $45 million and nothing's changed. And so at some point we need to start using some of our political clout and some of our ability to try to direct some of these projects into that core, or they're simply just not going to happen there. And that's what worries me. So I hope for that reason you guys can support this motion. I'm just asking for an exercise to try to give Grand Spirit more options of where they could build a potential seniors facility.
Thank you for that. And that was the close.
I think the motion read again.
Certainly. Can you read the motion?
To direct administration to work with Grand Spirits to identify land available in the downtown site area for a new site.
Thank you. All right, I will call to question then. All in favor? And that is Councillors Clayton and Platt in favor, and opposed is Mayor Given and myself. Any follow-up discussion or motions that would be under new business? Councillor Clayton?
Just a question for administration. Obviously, there's ongoing conversation with Grand Spirit, etc., about the future possibility of sites. I wonder if it's possible for Grand Spirit as a stakeholder in our community to have a discussion with council of what the future of sites look like, and maybe that be at either a strategic priority working group or a council committee of the whole. But it'd be nice for council to have a discussion with Grand Spirit because I don't recall. So it's been a little while since we've had that. So it'd be nice just for future information to have a discussion with them. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you for that, Councillor Clayton. That feels a little better to me than to, the motion was a little heavy-handed, but this sort of reaching out to see if there's something that may be better has a different timbre to it, and I appreciate that a great deal. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll go then to outstanding items. Director Miller.
Thanks, Chair Friesen. Before I start on the outstanding items list, I just want to say thank you very much for the discussion today on the rec facility. I appreciate all the information. And I just want to say as well that administration, we're not looking for the easy route. Our recommendation was the lowest risk with the highest probability of success. So we have an excellent team of staff. We have the complex project team as well, established by the city manager. So whatever site is decided on, we'll do our very best to get the result that the community deserves. Yeah?
Thank you for that.
So on the oil, or the outstanding item list, so 1110, the indoor rec facility, that's now been moved to council discussion, so if we can take that off the oil. And then the other two are both on track for presentation at the next committee meeting.
Great, thank you. And motion to accept as amended then. That's Mayor Given. Thank you. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thanks. That brings to a close the community services meeting. And I think that we have Councillor Bressie up.
Yeah, and the next one's likely to be a lengthy meeting too with the business licensing bylaws. So let's do a 5-minute bio break before we start. So we'll start at about sit down, so we don't have Councillor Palat or Clayton yet, but we do have quorum, so I can start. And I say about start, and so then we do have, so I'll call our Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee for October 13th to order. And to start, we've got a delegation, and that is Ms. Porter. And Ms. Porter, sorry for my apologies that the last meeting went long and we had to give you a wait, but thank you for sticking around. We appreciate it.
No worries. Am I up first? Sorry, am I supposed to speak now?
Yeah, sorry, you are first, so please go ahead and share what you'd like to share with committee.
Sure. So Raylan's not here. I'm Tia, Raylan's business partner, and together we own Hayes. So first, we just wanted to say good morning to committee and council members. We appreciate that you give us the ability to have this conversation. So basically, Raylan and I are asking, our request from the committee is to revisit bylaw C1064, specifically as it pertains to licensing provision 3-4-A. So currently the bylaw reads, a separate business license is required for each business location, and correspondingly, the city will issue a maximum of 1 business license for cannabis retail per separate business entity. So Raylan and I are asking that the committee would either strike this as part of the bylaw or to alter it in some capacity. But we base this on our following reasons. So currently, in no other industry does council require a same or similar bylaw. It feels very biased in our industry. There are several multi-branches of companies that currently run under one corporate heading. They're not expected to do that. So with this bylaw in place, it places an unfair amount of financial burden on cannabis owners that are small, like mom and pop shops. With this existing bylaw, then we are required to carry on costs of incorporation and accounting annual returns for each one of these separate business licenses. Essentially, all this bylaw has done is create a loophole for companies with access to more capital. They're able to buy these licenses if that's what's necessary. It just puts an undue amount of financial burden on us if we're trying to grow our brand in comparison. And finally, we know that cannabis is we're regulated by provincial regulations as well as the city. So in AGLC's bylaws, it states that if an existing business owner applies for a secondary location, we then get to bypass the timely process of due diligence. If, however, this bylaw stays in place, we are then required to open and run a secondary business entity as the bylaw states now. So then we're no longer offered AGLC's ability to pass on that due diligence. We're required then to submit the full application like we're unknown to AGLC. So this, in a delay perspective, we currently have a location. We have a permit on that space. We could start construction if this bylaw was to be removed. AGLC would probably grant us the secondary license within a couple of weeks. If this bylaw stays in place, we're looking at an 8-month delay by the time we get our application back to AGLC to do the whole due diligence on us as existing owners. So essentially that is the reason that we are asking for an amendment to this bylaw. So based on our above concerns, we're hopeful that city and administration will be able to look at a different way to draft this bylaw. And we just want to say thank you for listening to us. We super appreciate you letting us come to this meeting and address our concerns.
Great. Well, thank you. We appreciate it. I know that there's been a few issues of cannabis regulation where, as you say, it's a new industry and we're learning it too. And we were actually one of the first municipalities in Alberta to pass our regulations around cannabis licensing. And I know that there were some things in the bylaw that council put in that seemed fairly straightforward at the beginning. Then when AGLC gets involved, as I'm sure you're well aware, things often change as AGLC gets involved. So we appreciate you educating us on some of the challenges you're facing that I don't think we were aware of. At least I know I wasn't. I won't speak for council, but I know I sure wasn't aware of until you highlighted them with us. Just looking around, are there any questions from committee? Great. I don't think we don't have any questions for you right now, and I do note that there's an administrative report coming to us in this meeting that makes a recommendation that aligns with you. So I'll save any discussion of what we're going to do with your request. So we've heard from our administration and gotten their recommendation, but really do appreciate hearing from industry as well as our people. It is very helpful to us as we make a decision. So you're welcome to stick around the meeting and watch if you want. I'd ask you to turn off your camera just to kind of leave the table. Oh, and sorry, Mayor Given's waving to me now. I think that Mayor Given does have something.
Yeah, well, actually, just a comment. And more than, if they want to stick around and listen, by all means. I just want to make a note too, while we're at this point of the discussion, that it looks like the provincial government has actually recently passed, I think today or in the last little while, passed some changes to the way the province regulates AGLC licenses. They did have a cap on no single entity having more than 15% of the business of the licenses in the province. And so, the recommendation from administration to remove this cap, the request from the delegation, and the provincial government action all seem to be sort of leading the same way, as I think all the parties involved sort of understand the industry a little bit better. And so certainly appreciate the presentation, from our industry members, and appreciate them both for sticking around during their business day. But just wanted to point that out at this point, that the province is also moving in that direction. So I think it's high time the city does as well.
Great, thank you. That's great context that I wasn't aware of either. So thank you, Mayor Given. I appreciate that. So yeah, you folks are welcome to stick around and listen to the meeting. Just ask you to turn off your camera to kind of leave the table as we go along with the rest of our meeting. But thank you again for being here. And then that brings us to thanks. Then that brings us to item 2.1, Director Service Update, and that is Director Glavin.
Thank you, Chair Brussy. So we'll start off with energy and environment. The city's received a grant from the Municipal Climate Change Action Center that will allow us to prepare a community and corporate energy plans for the city. In engineering services, we've recently posted an RFP for bridge repair and replacement program, as well looking at some of the grant-funded projects that we have coming up that we recently approved. We've closed RFPs for the 103rd Avenue Rehabilitation and Slope Repair Project, the 2021 Local Road Rehab Project, as well as the Mount View Stormwater Improvements. In addition, we've completed paving of the snow dump right in advance of snow season, so we're ready to go and meeting all of our environmental standards on that. For inspection services, we're doing a preliminary review of the O'Brien Lake school site for the Catholic School Board, so we're hoping to see that go ahead in the spring. In transportation, we've recently started to receive our sand deliveries for this year, as well as salt, so we are good to go for when it does start snowing here any day now by the looks of it. And our winter season for operations kicks off on November 1st, which is essentially just kind of rebalancing our workforce to ensure that we can respond 24 hours a day. As well, transportation engineering is installing a number of speed radar signs around the city. The one you'd likely have noticed if you've driven on 100th Street South in the Swanhaven area, that there is a speed sign adjacent to the Swanhaven School. In parks, we are doing a regrading project at the Center for Creative Arts to better establish drainage in that area beside the Legion, if you've noticed any of our crews down and around that area. As well, we've prepared the Montrose concourse green space there for the skating oval that we tested last year. We're going to try that again this year. And as well, we're doing our turf fertilization, getting ready for winter, and that covers every park and sports field in the city, and that is currently underway this week. And that's all.
Great. Thank you. Just taking care of a little bit of logistics is just noting to our recording secretary that during the delegation presentation, Councillor Clayton came into chambers, and also I think Councillor Palat's not in chambers because he had a conflict with that delegation. So I'm just wondering if somebody would poke back and let Councillor Palat know he can come in. Thank you, Councillor Friesen. Are there any questions for Director Glavin? Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Brussy. Director Glavin, I wondered if you could, and if you don't have it easily, maybe it could be brought back to the next committee meeting, but I was looking for an update on the, from the Economic Recovery Subcommittee that sits under Economic Development Advisory. I was looking for an update in regards to the grant that was awarded to the Chamber for the purchase of the Get in the Loop franchise. So if you have an update, great now, but if not, maybe I'd be happy to make a motion if committee would allow me, but I was looking for an update on that.
Thank you, Chair Brussy. So regarding the grant that was to the Chamber for the Get in the Loop franchise, I don't believe we've received any formal reporting back from the Chamber on that. The money was allocated to them for their discretion for that purpose, but it's certainly something that we could ask.
Sure, yeah, and I mean, if you'd prefer a motion, so it's on the outstanding items list, I'm happy to do so. But, you know, as we support projects going forward for economic recovery and other things, I think it's always nice to have an update on them. So, so if it's on, is it better if it's on the outstanding items list, or?
I think it kind of depends on what you'd like out of it. If you'd like a written report, or you'd like something formal so you could show the community, I think that, then yeah, make a motion. Yeah. But if you just want informally, if you're okay,
no, I think I'd like a little more formal. So I'll make a motion and then I'll discuss that. But I would move that recommend that, or I would move that administration bring back an update on the Economic Recovery Fund that granted the Chamber of Commerce the ability to purchase the Get in the Loop franchise. And with that report, I'd like to see statistics of how many Chamber members signed on, you know, to this point, what is the utilization of that app? So some true sort of statistics of, you know, is the app getting used? Are the Chamber members supporting it? Because the intent of it was to create some economic recovery and incentivization of getting people spending money locally with Chamber members, and also, you know, that are obviously businesses within our region. So some data would be much appreciated.
I'm just kind of curious. I mean, I'm not opposed to getting that information, but I'm just kind of curious what you're envisioning we might do with that, in terms of, it was a one-time grant we gave, so it's kind of, I don't really know if there's a decision point we've got relating to this in the future. So what are you hoping to?
Yeah, so I mean, as that subcommittee goes down the road and makes other decisions and potentially looks at funding other projects, it would be nice to see what the history has come out of decisions that were already made. And in order to assess this program, I need some data. So.
Okay, great. Any questions or debate on this motion, Mayor Gibbon?
Yeah, I just sort of, yeah, again, to get not necessarily opposed, but just to get further understanding. So are we looking for like the current results, or are we looking for results after some period of time? Because I think I saw something, and I don't know whether it just came to me personally, or if, you know, how wide it went, about the Chamber advertising the possibility for people to sign up for it. So it sounds like they've got it. I just wonder how much results we'll have if they've just sort of launched it in the last month or weeks or whatever. Like, it, you know, maybe this would be a 6-month reporting or a 1-year reporting. Like, I kind of wonder if we're asking for a more formal written report with data. I'm not sure what that report would say if they said, you know, they've just launched and so far they have 2 people signed up.
Yeah. So, and I guess to that, from my understanding, the process of it is that the initial first 3 months when you sign up are free. After that, there's a cost obviously to the Chamber members, and it was intended to be not only a revenue generator for the Chamber within time, but it was also intended to be a little bit of a stimulus uptake and support small local businesses. If we're going to make decisions going forward with some of this recovery money, it'd be nice to know where this is. And if it's only been a month, you know, I'm happy for this to take a little bit more time. But I'm sure the Chamber has some information because they've already been working on it. So the data may be very small in the beginning, but I'd just like to know for that subcommittee's information and for our information as we continue to fund potential projects for economic recovery, how the first little bit of this one's been going.
And I guess where I'm at with this is, I don't know if I support this motion right now, in terms of, for me, I'd be very interested to just get an informal as part of a director service area update, just how it's going at this point. I think that if I'm actually asking for, if I'm actually getting a written report where you put in the time to write a report and all that, and it becomes a really clear matter of public record, I'd kind of like to get through the first quarter of 2021 first. That way you've got the 3 months of the free, you got 3 months of the paid, and I think that gives you better data if we're going to show. My worry is, A, the work that goes into a written report, and also it's really easy to look at a written report and say, this is the data, see, it's clearly not working, even if it's only going for a month.
So I guess the other thing is that the first 3 months is only based on you committing for the year. So you know what I mean? So it's not like they're running the program for 3 months and then you're going to get to see other data. So it's like you sign up, you get 3 months free, but it's based on you committing to for a year. If there isn't support for this motion, that's fair enough. I think at a minimum, it would be a reasonable expectation to ask the chamber to come back to committee and update us in regards to how this is going. It was a significant amount of money that we gave the chamber to execute this program. And if it's not working out, maybe we made a bad decision or the chamber made a bad decision. But I just want to, as we're going to continue to look at other programming, it's important to know the existing program, if it's working or not.
Great. Well, we do have a motion. Any other debate or discussion about this motion? Okay, so I'll call it to question. All in favor? Councillor Clayton is in favor. All opposed? And the balance of committee is opposed. That being said, I voted, Mayor Given.
Yeah, no, I support the intent. I think most of us probably do, and so maybe it's just a direction to administration, direct administration, request details from the Chamber of Commerce on the implementation of the Get in the Loop program, and report back March 1st, 2021. So the intent there, so it's direction to administration will ultimately will give us a report, that we'll all be able to see, but does give that time for, the end of this year, the start of next year. And then the chamber will have some running time with the program that they'll be able to report on. And then council can assess sort of whether, the impact of that decision that we made.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely support that motion, and also just kind of informally looking at Director Glavin, I'm wondering if we did pass this motion, if it would be possible for us just as part of your director's service update next time, just to get a bit of context in 2 weeks when we meet again, just not a written report, just informally. And I'm getting a thumbs up from Director Glavin. Councillor Clayton.
Yeah, and fair enough. That's fine. I just think that March is not really going to give us an indication or any information for the subcommittee as they're going forward in the next few months to make decisions on what they're going to support next. So at least with Director Glavin's update, whenever possible, it'll give them a little bit of information. March 1st may be too late, but fair enough. So I will support this motion. Thanks.
Great. I'd also say that depending on what we hear from Director Glavin, there's no reason we can amend this direction at the next committee meeting if we hear that and we say, hey, let's report earlier. So I'm very open to that conversation next committee meeting. Great. Any other conversation or debate? All in favor? And that motion passes committee unanimously. Any other questions or business arising from the Director's Service Area Update? All right. In that case, we will move on to our next item, which is B City with Ms. Gardner.
Thank you, Chair Bressy. So this summer, Energy and Environment was approached by Ms. Stark at 7 Generations Energy requesting that the city consider participating in the B City program. B Cities describes the program as it's about cities working together to protect pollinators and preserve the beauty of nature. Pollinators are not just bees. It also includes butterflies, moths, beetles, flies, and hummingbirds. Between 75 and 95% of flowering plants require the assistance with pollination or pollinators. In our region, crops such as canola or alfalfa benefit from having bees pollinate the crops. There is evidence that pollination maximizes the yield. Pollinator populations are on the decline due to a loss in feeding or nesting habitat. Homeowners can help by planting gardens that attract pollinators, native species, or food, such as potatoes. Participants in the Bee City program must commit to creating, maintaining, and or improving pollinator habitat, educating their community, employees, and or customers about the importance of pollinators, celebrating pollinators during National Pollinator Work or at other times. Participation in this program aligns with the Municipal Sustainability Plan and Bylaw C-1293, Section 2.7, which is about naturalized areas. Internal stakeholders were consulted, Parks and Communications and Marketing, and they agreed that this program enhances existing programs such as Earth Day, GP Grows, the Edible Landscaping, Neighborhood Orchards. And the first year of the program is at no cost. The following years, the cost is $400 annually, which can be absorbed by the Energy and Environment budget. 7 Gen supports this initiative and is willing to assist where possible. And Ms. Park is actually on the call as well. So if you have questions, you could also ask Cindy. Administration is recommending that committee recommend council adopt the BCD resolution.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Park, for bringing this forward and for being here. Were you open to present too, or are you just here for questions if we have any?
Well, I can give you a little update on why this started and what, if you're interested, of course. But
that was going to be a question I was going to ask you. So, yeah, please do.
So, as many of you know, I'm with Some Generations Energy, and of course, we work with community a lot and want to do the right thing for not just community, but environment and education and that sort of thing. So we're exploring ways to support our region and our communities. And one of the things and how it started was, how do we get kids engaged in environmental activities and do things that are right for our future? And kids and, well, many adults love bees and pollinators. So it's kind of one of the things that was one of the considerations. But the other thing is, in our very backyard, we have the National Bee Diagnostic Center. We have an amazing facility supported by the GPRC, and nobody knows about it. And I think the advantage of working with all of these stakeholders. So we would want to work with the city, we want to work with the college, we want to work with the National Bee Diagnostic Center, as well as schools and Bee City Canada, to bring this as in the forefront of an environmental action that everybody can participate in. So in saying that, that includes our staff who would love to volunteer, and that could be volunteering with the city, with the community gardens, or doing things like that. But ultimately, the most successful programs are the ones where all stakeholders have an interest and have some investment into it. And Bee City Canada is, of course, nationwide. In Alberta, there is only 3 bee cities recognized, and that's Calgary, Airdrie, and Chestermere. The fact that we have this research center in our backyard, it stuns me that we aren't even recognized as a bee city yet, and it just may be an awareness thing. The other thing that our energy company is quite focused on is ESG, so that's environmental, social, and governance focus. That is a worldwide approach to managing, well, not just oil and gas, but in all sectors in benefiting environmental footprints and also benefiting the outcomes of our actions in the environment. One of the things for us, so there, of course, is we want to work with the college and the National Bee Diagnostic Center. We actually want to fund some research projects, and that is things in our own backyard. So, for example, weed control is a requirement of all of our sites to make sure that it's safe, it's clean, and many other things. But what we're looking at from our company point of view is there a way to reduce chemicals? Is there a way that if there is a chemical need that we use, can we do it at a certain time where it doesn't affect the pollinators? So we're working with the Research Institute to find the best ways in our own business, but also to work with the community in other ways. Like, for example, we would be happy to support the city in things like no mow May. So you don't mow your lawn in May because the pollinators would take advantage of the flowering that is at that time. And, you know, maybe 7 Gen can support that kind of initiative and work with the city. So again, it's all about working together to create an environment that's best for our kids and do something that's fun. And I mean, we do a sunflower project with the Earth Day events that falls right into place there, but also creating that awareness in our Bee Institute in our backyard. So that's just kind of a high level of everything that we want to get involved with. But we have huge support from the college and the National Bee Institute. The fact that BeeWise Canada, or we're calling it BeeWise for our initiative, but certainly the stakeholders and everyone that's involved can have some fun with it. And I know that your gardening initiative where you handed out seeds and that sort of thing last fall was very well received by the community, and this just kind of adds to it.
Great. Well, thank you. I know that I can speak for a lot of people that don't enjoy yard work that I really get excited about the idea of no mow May. Are there any questions around becoming a bee city that committee would like to ask? In that case, is somebody prepared to make a motion? Councillor Thiessen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair Bressy. I'd like to thank Ms. Park for bringing this forward and our administration for their work with it. So in saying that, I would just move that committee recommends council adopt the Bee City resolution. And just speaking to this, I think it's forward-thinking, environmentally protective, community building exercise that is only going to enhance the programs that the City of Grande Prairie already offers, as well as building better corporate partnerships and a better relationship with the GPRC to make a sustainable community for our future. So I encourage committee to recommend this so we can get adopting it and get all the benefits for being part of the Bee City program. Thanks.
Any other discussion? The one thing I'll say is I just absolutely love this initiative because I think that we've had a lot of push as this council both to be more efficient with the taxpayer resources we're entrusted with, and also to work more with our community and work collaboratively. And this really is something that checks both those boxes for me. So thank you, Ms. Park. Thank you, Ms. Gardner, for bringing this forward. It's something that I think makes a lot of sense, fits a lot with the priorities we've had. So I'll call it to question. I've seen any other discussion. All in favor? And that passes committee unanimously. So thank you very much for being here, both of you. We really appreciate it again. And next, we've got Mr. Johnson with cannabis regulations.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee members and councillors. I have a very quick presentation for you folks. The recommendation that reads in the report is a little different than what I was intending to do. So what I do recommend to committee is that the Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee direct administration prepare amendments to the business license bylaw to remove the limitation of one retail cannabis business license per separate business entity and present to council for consideration. The report reads to return to a future committee meeting, but if procedurally we can proceed directly to council, that would be my preference. So I won't bother going over the report in detail, simply that this is 2 years since the legalization of cannabis. We, as the Cannabis Form and Fold Committee, promised committee and council we would report in on a 1-year interval. We did that last fall. We presented a couple of recommendations, or 3 to be exact, and this was one that did not pass. Committee asked that we bring it back for discussion in 1 year. And so here we are. And that's my recommendation, and I'm open for questions and comments from committee. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions? I guess just a procedural question I've got, Mr. Johnson, is we're about to debate a new business licensing bylaw. Is there any reason that we need to give you this direction, this direction to come to council with amendments, or could we just amend the new business bylaw as we're debating it today?
Thank you, Chair Bressy. My one concern about that is that if there's any problems with the adoption of the new business license bylaw in terms of timing, presenting to council, as you saw, we had a delegation and they have an interest in opening up a second store. So I think at least from their perspective, time is of the essence. So my preference would be to do a one-off. We can certainly incorporate that change into the bylaw as presented to council, but I guess just as a safeguard, my preference would be to separate the two.
Great, that makes a lot of sense. In that case, is anybody willing to make a motion? Councillor Thiessen.
Thanks again, Chair Bressy. I will make the motion. I'll move that the Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee direct administration to prepare amendments to the business license bylaw to remove the limitation of one retail cannabis business license per separate business entity and return to a future council meeting. And just speaking to this motion, and also to, I guess, the delegations that came in when they first approached us at council, I asked them if they had any concerns about the fire and flower. It's also detailed in the report that it is potential that larger corporate entities can find ways around our current business licensing bylaw in order to establish more than one retail store with a different owner but still carry the same fire and flower name. So in recognizing that and knowing that this was already a fluid bylaw that we're going to keep reviewing over the first few years, I would encourage the rest of the committee to support this, and I look forward to what Joe and his team can bring forward to council.
Great. Mayor Given.
Yeah, I'll just speak in support of the motion. As a reference before, the provincial government is changing some regulations around this on a provincial basis, so I think this is in alignment with that. And I also think, you know, the desire there was to support the development of local smaller entrepreneurs. I think as the market matures, we're seeing, you know, this wouldn't, I don't think we would have supported the development of local entrepreneurs if we kept this in place forever. So I think it was a reasonable regulation at its time. And I think that as the market matures, it's likely that we will see some consolidation. Some people that got into the market early may profit from that because they can sell their license or their business or whatever to somebody else. And that's a natural part of the way markets work. And so I think we should be able to support that, market mechanism.
Any further discussion? Great. In that case, all in favor? And that passes committee unanimously. Now, Mr. Judge, just one more procedural question. Is there any reason that when we talk business licensing, we shouldn't, it would be a bad idea to amend that bylaw now and maybe save you some work of coming back in the future? If, assuming we amend it and that bylaw actually passes council relatively soon?
Thank you, Chair Bressy. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any problems with that. And I guess from an administrative perspective, if the timing works that we're bringing the new business license bylaw to council as fast as this amendment, we would simply put this amendment first to ensure that council's behind it. And if for some reason it failed at council, then we would stick handle that and insert it in the new business license bylaw. So I think that would be fine.
Great, thank you. In that case, we will move on to our city communication with new homeowners, and that's Ms. Trim and Ms. Downey.
Thank you, Chair Bressy. So at the September 29th Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee meeting, administration received direction to present the materials developed for the homeowner communication, as well as the plans for transmitting those materials at a future committee meeting. So in your agenda package, you will have seen the brochure attached, which includes a variety of information relating to home ownership, city services, and how to connect with the city. The city drafted this brochure in consultation with numerous internal stakeholders as well as external stakeholders, including the Canola to Key Advisory Team, which includes representation from the development associations, including UDI and BILD, utility companies, engineering consultants, as well the Grande Prairie and Area Association of Realtors also contributed to the development of the brochure. The primary direct distribution method from the city will be proposing to include it in an existing package that is already mailed to homeowners upon transfer of title and is distributed by our Assessment and Taxation Department. In addition, we plan to publish it digitally via social media as well as our website. And we also are looking to work with our Economic Development Department to disperse it to the Grande Prairie and Area Association of Realtors for distribution to homeowners. And I would be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Great. Looking around, does anybody have any questions? I know. Just a couple thoughts. Is I note that there's an intent to include a letter with this, and I don't know what council thinks, but for me, I personally think that letter should maybe come from the mayor instead of the city. I think it might be good to give a personal touch to such things. Would be my opinion, anyways. And I also hope I'm not going to ask anybody to make a motion or anything about this, but I also hope that that letter would highlight some things that somebody who's new to Grande Prairie would be good for them to know, to build this as their community. I know that this will be going to lots of people that aren't new to Grande Prairie, but I'm thinking one of my big priorities with this is that family that buys a house in Grande Prairie, plans to be here for 5 years. I really hope they end up being here for 50 years. And I think this is great information about owning a home. I don't know if it's great information about getting integrated in the community, such as, hey, we've got a sport connection if you're looking for sports. We've got a volunteer service bureau if you're looking to get involved. We've got a great East Link Center that you can spend time. So I just hope that a little bit of thought goes into how can we welcome people to our community if they have to be receiving this when they're new to our community. I see Councillor Clayton.
I had a comment in regards to the brochure. 2 areas that I thought potentially were maybe included but could be more easily identified was under garbage collection. I wonder if it could include recycling, so garbage and recycling collection. And then I don't know if there's interest from the committee, but I know something that I get questioned about quite often is in regards to the parking of RVs. And so if you're new to our community, this might be somewhere that I don't know where you fit it in, but it's just a thought that it could be included for information. Thanks.
Great. I see Councillor Thiessen and Councillor Palat.
Thank you very much, Chair Bressy. Yeah, no, I like the look of the brochure. I really like Councillor Clayton's suggestion around recycling, adding the recycling, and also the RV parking, because that tends to be, an issue, especially in summer season when they take it out of storage, or when the winter season when they want to store it on their own property. Just a sort of response. I don't know if I want administration doing extra work to Councillor or Chair Bressy's remarks, but on the first page of the brochure, there's lots of connecting, like go to the city of Grande Prairie, check out our 100 kilometers of trails, check out the GP guide. Here's how you engage with the city. Here's interactive maps, transit routes, and culture and entertainment. So I think they cover that on page 1. I know Councillor Blackburn had sent in an email to Kinza and team suggesting his own bit of improvements, maybe a bit of more of a welcome, and I think Chair Bressy alluded to that. The only thing that I would say is I love the design of it. I think the only thing that's missing in a new homeowner's guide is people, like smiling and being happy. It's a small thing, and I don't want to get into the details, but just a little suggestion, when you buy a home, you're happy about it, right? Put those smiley faces there. Otherwise, it all looks great, and yeah, those little additions that Councillor Clayton suggested, I think, are good add-ons. Thanks for all your work, Ms. Trim.
Great. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Chair Bressy. Thanks for this report. It's something that I think the community has been long waiting for, and I know for me, I've been wanting to see these get to new homeowners specifically, but even people that are moving around in the community. I think this is great information. Just more of a question for information is, so we're going to, if we receive this for information today, this will be an ongoing item for the city. It'll be an operational thing. I'm just wondering if there's going to be a touch point, say a year from now with council, to see what the feedback was, how this was looking, if administration can kind of give us an idea of, is this one of those things that just happened today and then it's done and we aren't discussing it again, or if there's going to be a touch point at some point for us to see the results and how this has went, because I think it's going to be very effective, but I also don't want it to be kind of forgotten about.
I see Director Glavin moving for his microphone.
Thank you, Chair Bressy. This is something that probably wouldn't naturally come up, so if it's something that you would want to see specifically in a year, we could do that, but there wouldn't be a natural touch point aside from what you would see in the community or if you bought a home.
Okay.
Any other questions, or Councillor Clayton?
Sorry, just one more small suggestion in regards to snow removal, snow plowing and ice control. I wondered if it could be identified in regards to residential homeowners' responsibility of clearing sidewalks. So just assist with the mobility, etc. So if it could just be addressed in regards to the expectation that you clear the sidewalks, especially, if you live in a residential area where there's school kids walking to school, and it's really important to keep those sidewalks clear. So if it could just be addressed, it might fit naturally under snow plowing and ice control. Thanks.
And then just make sure we're all on the same page. We're all throwing out ideas, but nobody's making a motion. So right now we're not directing administration to do things. We're saying, hey, here's some ideas, and my understanding is administration will go and consider them, and they may or may not use our ideas right now because we're not making motions. And for the things I threw out, I'm quite comfortable with that. There are things that I just want them to just think about, but just make a motion if there's something you think is really important that absolutely gets in there. Any other conversations or debate? Great. Well, could I get a motion to receive for information if nothing else? Councillor Clayton.
So moved. Thank you.
Great. And then calling the motion to question, all in favor? And that passes committee unanimously. Thank you for the work on this, administration. We really appreciate it. And then finally, moving on to a proposed business license bylaw, and that is Ms. Dennis.
Thank you, Chair Bresty. Administration recommends that the Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee recommend Council give 3 readings to bylaw C-1393, being the business license bylaw, and direct administration to prepare amendments to fees, rates, and charges bylaw C-1395 as per attachment A and present to Council for approval. At the June 9th Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee meeting, committee made the following motion. Committee direct administration to bring back a report on business licensing by October 1st. The existing business license bylaw C-1064 was adopted in July of 2003 with several amendments made as recent as July of 2019. This bylaw requires only specific business categories such as cannabis-related industries, construction and trades, towing and boosting services, and others to obtain a municipal business license. Businesses not identified within bylaw C-1064 do not require an annual license. They simply require development and building permits prior to the business occupying their space. These categories typically include retail stores, restaurants, and offices. The proposed bylaw will require all eligible businesses to obtain an annual business license. Businesses that are exempt from obtaining a municipal business license are encouraged to complete an application form to help us better understand the broad scope of businesses in Grande Prairie. A few of examples of these exempt businesses include dentists, doctors, and physical therapists. Under the application process, businesses will be classified according to the North American Industry Classification System, or short form is NAICS. Utilizing NAICS will ensure data is consistent and easily comparable with other jurisdictions across North America. The proposed bylaw is drafted with the goals of streamlining the process and reducing unnecessary requirements. This is accomplished by changes to the business description, the regulatory requirements, the bylaw separation, the duration of business licenses, the addition of temporary business licenses, and to the fees and charges. Over the course of the year, administration met with a number of stakeholders and hosted 2 public information sessions. Administration is recommending reduced fees for all resident and home-based businesses in order to reduce the financial burden on local businesses. This recommendation is scenario 1, where the resident fee is decreased from $100 to $25, the home-based business fee is decreased from $200 to $100, and the non-resident fee is increased from $420 to $525. Administration recommends an implementation date of May 1st of 2021. In the months leading up to the implementation date, administration will conduct a robust public information campaign. The proposed changes will directly support the city's business retention and expansion efforts by creating data that will allow administration to have a wholesome understanding of businesses operating within the city. This data will also allow administration to source supplies and services from local businesses in situations requiring a rapid response, as well as facilitate broad communication with the business community in situations such as mass evacuations or re-entry procedures. Thank you, and I am open to any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for all the work that went into this. I know it was significant. So, Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Chair Bressi. Just a question for administration. Just looking at the line item of residential fee of $25. Do we have any idea, or do we have a best guess, I guess, as an organization, what it costs us to invoice, collect, and reconcile payments on average?
Chris.
So I can provide some historical context to that because business licensing transferred from enforcement services to planning and development in this past year. And I can say that it was approximately $300,000 on an annual basis, which for, in excess of the last 10 years anyways, has been the operating component of the business licensing built into our operating budgets.
I guess I'm just trying to, it kind of helps, but what I'm trying to get my head around is just, reading with some industry on corporate size, which we definitely would fit. It costs most corporations between $15 and $18 just to administer invoicing, reconcile, and payment. And so I'm looking at this going, okay, we're going to collect 25. It might cost us $15 to $18 to get it. Are we making $7 to $10 off a residential permit? And so, or license. So just for me, I don't know if, with the $300,000 number, I don't know how that would correlate, but I don't know if there's an answer specifically to what it would cost for that. And the reason I'm going to this is if we're going to charge $25 for that amount, for me, I'd rather just see us charge $0 to businesses and residents for the resident side. And I'll say that because I think the goal for me of this, and I like this, the business licensing, I was opposed with the first, but I want to collect the data. And I think for a $25 line item to collect data, I'm just not sure if we're going to get the wins we want to get in the community, especially with COVID times. It's a small number. And when I look at the home who was paying $200 previously, if we left them at $200 and we got rid of the residential fee, we'd still be collecting the same amount of money. And so for me right now with what's going on in our economy, with what we're seeing with what's happening potential with commercial vacancies, I don't want to encourage more people to work from home. I really don't want to encourage more people to work from home in our community right now. I think it's great if some models can fit that. But I think if we continue to incentivize people from working from home, we're going to see a compounded problem over time of watching our office and our commercial space continue to drop in value. So I would sure hope I'm not a voting member of this one, but for me, I would like to see a proposed force scenario, which would include a $0 fee for businesses and move the $200 back to home fee, which would give us the same net value. I think that would be much more palatable in the community, and I think it's something that we should be trying to work towards. So just my comments on it.
Great. Thank you. Is there anybody else has some questions or comments? Well, I know I've got a couple. Sorry, I just have to hand this computer off to tech support so I can see Councillor Blackburn. But a question I had was, I've got a number of questions, but one was prerequisites for a business license. Concern I've heard in the community is I've heard concerns about the cost, and I can't make motions either, but I definitely support going to $0 for a resident business. That's something I'd like to see. The other concern I hear from businesses is just, hey, we want government out of our business. It's not your business what we're doing. And so I've heard concerns about the information that we're going to collect. So item section 6.2 says that the chief license inspector may request any information. I'm just kind of curious, a question for administration. What information right now are you anticipating you'll ask for when somebody applies for a business license? I'm not sure who to direct that to. I think I see Director Glavin. And sorry, I'm just struggling because I don't have my computer in front of me right now. But would that be Ms. Dennis?
Thank you, Chair Bressy. I can speak to that. So the information that we request right now is the basic business company name, the type of business that they operate. We'll be asking the NAICS code, so whatever category is associated with their business. And then for economic development, we've also are going to be requesting the number of full-time employees and the number of part-time employees. As part of any regulatory requirements, there is a few additions to, for example, direct sellers or family day homes. They would be providing their criminal record checks as a prerequisite to their business license. And if their business license, if their criminal record check is not acceptable, then that would be one thing that we would actually not allow them to receive a business license to that. So.
Great, thank you. I wonder if a change that might be worthwhile making in the bylaw is twofold. Is one, actually laying out of the bylaw what information will allow administration to collect and not collect. I know that there's worry that sounds reasonable to me. I know I've heard from some businesses worry that there could be creep in that, and I don't actually think there would be, but to give confidence in this bylaw, I think it might be worth laying out what information we're going to collect in the bylaw. And I know the other side that I wonder if it might be worth putting in the bylaw is, I know that as a public organization, we've got very strict standards when it comes to FOIP and how we treat the information we get. At the same time, a lot of people aren't aware of all those standards. So I wonder if it might just, for somebody who will only read this bylaw and won't read any other city policies and any provincial legislation, I wonder if it might be worth actually putting explicitly in the bylaw, we expect our administration to follow the provisions of the Freedom Information Privacy Act, just to give confidence to somebody reading this. I think that might be a worthwhile change to make. Is there any other questions or comments? Councillor Thiessen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair Bressy, and thank you very much, Ms. Dennis. Just one question in regards to the risk aspect and the summary conclusion based off of why we're making these changes. So part of the risk is that was identified in the report is that business community may view the bylaw and associated fees as additional red tape and monetary burden. I know that we propose this new bylaw as with the design goals of simplifying the business licensing process. Has administration put in any consideration on how we might be able to simplify that process for business owners on an annual renewal basis, whether that's just resubmitting, our business hasn't changed and we're still operating like an online tool or something to sort of ease those concerns?
Yeah, Ms. Dennis, I can see you now, so please go ahead if you're prepared to answer that, or let me know if I need to pass it off to somebody else.
Thank you, Chair Bressy. So right now we actually do have a online portal system that is that will be easily accessible in the time frame that we do implement, or if we do implement the proposed business licensing bylaw to license all businesses. We are just in the fine-tuning portion, I guess, of it, just making sure that it is user-friendly, but we do have that online portal that is accessible essentially 24 hours a day for people to renew their business license or to apply online as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Chair Bressy. Just a question for administration as well. If you're a member of the Downtown Association or in the downtown area, I believe a lot of these questions are already asked through that fee. I'm just wondering if this would be a duplication, or if there'd be looked at that Downtown Association area be not part of this, or what the thought is around downtown.
I see Director Glavin saying he'd like to take that question. Oh, sorry, I might have misunderstood what was happening when I have to look behind me a little bit. Would you like, Director Glavin, you're the director, so feel free to pass it on if you want, but I'll go to the director first.
Sure, we're doing hand signals between us here, and it's not quite, translation's not very good. Yes, we have spoken to the Downtown Association, and I believe most of their concerns have been addressed with this. I know that Ms. Dennis could probably elaborate on that.
Yeah, please go ahead, Ms. Dennis.
Thank you, Chair Bressy. So currently the information that the assessment department obtains for their area there is legal name, the name of the leaser on the space, mailing address, and other relevant contact information. And I know for us, our business license application form will actually have the legal name, the business activity, the NAICS code, physical business location, the business mailing address, if the business is leased, rented, owned, if the business leases, rent, or owns the business location, the number of full-time employees, the number of part-time employees, approximate square footage of the location, if the business is a franchise or not, the owner's contact information, and other relevant contact information. And I know that the Downtown Association does obtain some information as well. I'm just afraid that if we go through a third party, that the information may not be as consistent as it would be on an application form for people or for businesses to receive a business license.
Okay, no, and that's fair enough. I guess the concern for me is that if you're a downtown member, or this is going to be viewed as we got asked from two different groups to do the same thing, and now we're paying a separate fee. So it's just a concern, I think, for the downtown. Just another question on that, if I can, Chair Bressie, is had we looked at asking, and again, it's whether people will actually give this information or not, but have we looked at asking where we anticipate businesses' sales going the next 12 months? Are they projecting that they're going to go up, down, or stay the same? I think if we're looking at this as an economic recovery tool, it would be nice to kind of know what our businesses are forecasting is going to happen to their revenue. I'm just not sure if we're allowed to ask that question, but to me, I think it would be really a great question to add if we can. So is that something we can add as a question?
Ms. Dennis. Or I see Ms. Lee coming on too. So Ms. Lee, feel free to answer if you feel that you can answer that one.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. In an attempt to work with Megan and their team, we really wanted to focus in on the specific and more sort of concrete data items that we are requesting, or that we have requested from us and utilize on a daily basis. The question of sales and revenue is one that we more often obtain through our business visitation programs and through one-on-one conversations with businesses. We use that as sort of a gauge to measure the market up and down. We did consider it, but felt that we wanted to really keep the information focused to sort of more concrete items. And again, being conscious of some of the issues raised previously of data collection, what exactly we would be using that data for. The definitions of the data that is currently being requested have more concrete definitions, I guess, for their use, whereas the question of revenue is a little bit more fluid and, a little bit more fluid.
Okay, thanks for that, Ms. Lee and Ms. Dennis.
Any other questions? Sorry, Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Councillor Bressie. Just an observation on the last question from Councillor Palat is that it appears to me that all of the questions that are being contemplated for the business license are going to determine whether or not the business license is actually granted. And I think an additional question such as revenue forecasting and so on is irrelevant to the application. And I like Ms. Lee's observation that kind of information is gathered in more informal ways as we go through a year. Thanks.
Great. I know a couple other things I had was, first of all, not a question, but just something I absolutely love to see it. I love to see there's a provision for entrepreneurial youth. And it's very reasonable not to charge them for a license, not to put red tape on it. But I love that we're also very explicitly, by putting them in here, saying, hey, we really champion our youth that are entrepreneurial. So that's just something I absolutely love about this bylaw that made me so happy when I saw it. A question I've got about direct sales. My understanding is that somebody engaging in direct sales also requires a provincial license. Is that a correct understanding I have?
That is, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is correct. Any direct sales that go door to door also requires a provincial license with the province of Alberta.
So was there any consideration given to making that provincial license a condition of having, I don't see that as a condition of getting a city license. Was there any consideration given to they have to prove they've got provincial licensing before they get a license from us?
Thank you, Mr. Bressie. In the, sorry, can I just hold that thought for 1 second here?
Yeah, no rush.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. So in the proposed business licensing bylaw, it actually states that any business that is required to have a provincial license or a federal license is to supply that to us as well. So that is part of the application form, is that if this type of business is required to have a provincial business license, they are to provide that license number to us as well.
Great. Thank you. And then the last question that I had was, I know I read a number of business bylaws in other communities, and one with mobile with mobile food sites was a requirement that they provide waste or recycling receptacles. Was there any consideration to putting that into our bylaw?
Thank you, Chair Bresty. At this time, there was no decision to make that as a requirement in the business licensing bylaw.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody else with questions? I see Councillor Thiessen.
Pushed the wrong button there. There we go. Thank you very much, Chair Bresty. Thanks again, Ms. Dennis. I just need a little further clarity in regards to our business licensing, in regards to the businesses in the downtown BIA. By implementing this, would essentially through what we already collect through the downtown BIA, would we be double dipping as far as like the licensing fees or whatnot for businesses that are located in the downtown core? I'm just sort of looking for a bit of clarity on there. I think that's kind of where Councillor Platt was reaching to.
All right, I think this time I see his microphone on, so I think Director Glavin actually is trying to get in this time.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Bressi. No, this wouldn't be double dipping. The money that's collected on behalf of the BIA goes to the BIA less an administrative fee. So this isn't money that the city collects for city purposes. It's money city collects for BIA purposes.
Okay.
So the business license fee would be separate and for city purposes.
Okay. Yeah, no, I get that now. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Is anybody willing to make a motion? Mayor Given.
Thanks, Chair Bressi. I'd move that, and I'll just make sure that I'm on the right one. Excuse me. I'll move that committee recommend council give 3 readings to bylaw C 1393, being the business license bylaw. Period. And then we'll follow up on the other one separately because they're distinct motions.
Great. Awesome. Any questions or discussion on this motion? I know for me there are a few amendments I'd like to see in this bylaw, but I can't make motions at committee, so if I have to wait till it gets to council to move those amendments, so be it. But if people want to get that work done at committee, then I'd also be open to doing that amendment work at committee. Doesn't really matter to me, but just saying that I will have some amendments I'll be moving if this gets to council as is. Any other, Mayor Given? Yeah,
well, just, sort of that point, I guess the observation that I would make is this is the biggest rewrite of the city's business licensing regime in probably the last decade. It is a really important step, and I appreciate all administration's work to this point. And I have no doubt that there will be need to revise and change things over time. We should all expect that. We may, if there are things that we can identify right now that, that council has a desire to change, then by all means, if we want to do that at the council meeting. But don't forget that there's lots of opportunity to revise this bylaw on an ongoing basis. We've changed the city's business licensing, the old business licensing bylaw many times over the years to update in response to economic factors, desires from businesses and everything else. So we should remind ourselves that passing the bylaw doesn't mean that it's closed off and never gets changed. Certainly that's possible. And if there's things that we need to do now before we pass it, then that's fine as well. But certainly will be a living document going forward.
Yeah, and I know for me, I've already mentioned the amendments I'd like to see. The 2 big ones for me are, I think it would be worthwhile putting FOIP in here for sure and calling that out. But the big one for me is, or another small one for me is I think it might be worth saying mobile cooking units need to have recycling waste, but those are 2 relatively minor ones. For me, the really big one is what we're going to charge for a resident business. And I'm sure that'll be a fulsome council debate, so maybe that is worthwhile, not even touch till we get to council, but that's the big amendment for me that I'd like to see changed. Any other questions or debate? Great, well then calling the motion to question, all in favor? And that passes committee unanimously. And Mayor Given, would you be willing to make that second motion too?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd move that committee direct administration prepare amendments to the fees, rates, and charges bylaw C 1395 as per attachment A and return to a future committee meeting. So in speaking to this, administration will do that work and council will have that discussion at the committee meeting. So we're not recommending this forward to council. And if council wants anything, you know, if the committee wants administration to do work on anything different than attachment A, now would be the time to do it. We certainly could do it when it comes back as well. But, you know, if we have a strong sense of what direction we want to take, it would be reasonable to give administration that recommendation now. I'm moving the administrative recommendation for the fee scenario. But if somebody wanted to have some discussion or amend that, then, you know, we can certainly have that.
Councillor Palat.
I'm kind of like Councillor Brescia on this committee. I don't have a voting say, but I'd sure like to see us, if we're going to have this come to council, have a conversation about the fee structure. And I know for me, I'm going to say it again, I do not think we should be charging residents, especially on fee scenario number 2. We might even be doing that at break even and just creating a bunch of administrative work. I look at scenario number 1 on that. $25 again. If we kept the home base to exactly what it is currently at $200 and got rid of the zero, we'd be actually up a little bit of income. But more importantly, is that we wouldn't be charging the bulk of our businesses an additional fee, because I want people to subscribe to this and want to be engaged with it. So again, I can't make a motion, but I would love that if we had scenario 1 amended to say the fee is 0 for residents and home goes back to $200, so our net bottom line income stays relatively the same. That's something I think would be very supportive of, and I think would be well received within our community, especially with current economic times. I know $25 doesn't seem like a lot, but it's more of getting the phone call and getting an invoice right now in the mail for anything right now that I'm just worried that we're going to get a lot of negative egg in our face for something that we haven't had, which we're trying to achieve. And so I'd be really cautious of us trying to go after a $60,000 line item for that. So I'd love to see somebody amend that. Again, I can't on this committee. So
any other conversation or debate? Great. In that case, Mayor Given.
I'll just close. You know, if there are any committee members that are feeling some discomfort about that, obviously administration can prepare those changes, and then when it comes back to committee, we'd have a chance to discuss it again or amend those changes, and then ultimately that would need to go to council. So if there's anybody considering not voting for this direction to administration because it didn't propose those changes, don't forget there'll be at least 2 other options to propose those changes if we wanted to. But this is just to continue that process moving forward. Finally, you know, when we get to it, you know, I would make the observation that our business licensing fees on the resident fee, you know, we're down, and the $25 would make us the lowest of our comparator cities by far. And our home-based businesses are actually right now the highest of our comparator cities. So, you know, if we want to have an additional, you know, keep that up there, that's a choice council can make. But at the same time, if somebody is working out of their home, which we have lots of consultants in this area that are, you know, single employee consultants working out of their home, you know, that we are out of the market or at the top end of the market on that already, and a chance to bring that down somewhat, you know, I think probably would be appreciated. But in any case, we'll get 2 more swipes at this before ultimately it gets passed by council. So I would encourage council, committee members to support this motion.
Great. Well, I'll call this to question. All in favor? And that motion carries unanimously. Any other business relating to our business licensing bylaw? Great. In that case, we will move on to our outstanding items list, and that is Director Glavin.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. So today we dealt with item 1115, the city communications with new homeowners, as well as business licensing that'll be advancing on to council. 2 updates here. We have item 1082, Parks Bylaws and Policies. We're looking to push this one to December 8th. There's not a big time constraint. We've just got a lot of projects right now that is causing this one not to get a lot of attention. And 1093, sorry, I have 1093 on there twice, but it's 1090, the construction work in Smith subdivision. Depending on what happens at council, this report might get delayed again, just regarding the Smith land, as this has the potential to change the concept plan that we would ultimately bring forward for design. So this might be a little bit later than at the following meeting.
Great. Any questions? Somebody willing to make a motion? Councillor Thiessen?
So moved, Chair Brescia, as amended.
Great. All in favor? That motion passes committee unanimously, and with that, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Is that Councillor Minhas up next?
well given. And first item is 101 is verbal update. Mr. Shane.
Thank you, Chairman Haas. I'll give a brief update. The Finance Department is focused on the budget deliberation prep and finalizing the presentation for Council's consideration in November. Procurement is busy scheduling all of the capital for next year. This year was our largest capital year, and next year will be larger. And so some sequencing is important, and we're trying to get as much out here before Christmas as possible to give us the best chance of success for next year. The final thing I wanted to update on was we're about to launch a new open data portal. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but our budget portal has been offline for much of the year. It was an extremely expensive thing that we had operating that didn't get very much use and really wasn't very intuitive. So we were able to bring that in-house, focus some energy on it. We're saving about $35,000 by moving to a new in-house system that we'll be launching later in the week. It'll evolve over the next year, but we really felt it was important to give some more access to how decisions are made and how budgets are built. So that'll be rolling out here later in the week, and I'm appreciative for some feedback once that happens. We want to have that in advance of the election. We know that's an important tool for candidates as they're trying to understand the city. So we have focused some energy from finance and GIS to come up with a new in-house solution that saves us money, more user-friendly, and we think it'll be more accessible for residents. And that's my update for today.
Thank you, Jane, for update. Any question for update? None. Then we move on to the second one, outstanding item. Let's change it again.
Thank you, Chairman Haas. There are no updates. Both items are on track for the dates reported.
Thank you. And we need the motion. Elder Tool. Oh,
yes,
Eunice,
I move.
Eunice. Go ahead, Eunice.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize you were looking to Councillor.
I move to update the outstanding items list as presented.
Thank you. Motion is on the table. All in favor? I guess our community corporate service committee meeting for 3 minutes. That was pretty good. Thank you. So now I can give it to Mr. Plot.
The voting members on this are myself, Councillor Thiessen, Councillor O'Toole, and Mayor Given. And so we have a delegate to start with, so I will recognize the Chamber of Commerce if they would like to speak on behalf of their presentation.
Well, thank you. Art, are you there? Can you hear us?
You bet, Larry. Sounds good.
You bet. Well, thank you, Chair Pilat. And thank you to the committee for having us as a delegation today. We have our proposal. It's for the public-private partnership for the affordable housing proposal. I'm taking it you all have a copy of that proposal in front of you. The proposal is just as it stated. It's for the city to give consideration to a public-private partnership to address the affordable housing needs in the city. It's for your consideration as intended to meet the growing need for affordable housing, as well as a potential mechanism to stimulate the economic recovery. So the city has a 2020-2030 strat plan around this initiative. And part of that development of that plan was in consultation with stakeholders, and the Chamber was one of those stakeholder groups that was engaged with the development of that plan. Since then, we as a Chamber have met with and discussed the basis of the proposal with our members and affected stakeholders. These discussions have formed the content of this proposal. Our past chair, Dan Wong, developed this proposal, presented to our Chamber board, and it was unanimously approved to be presented to the city for consideration. And at the end of this, I'll ask Dan to speak on some of those consultations that he undertook with the stakeholders. It's also important to note that the city report identified two major housing classifications, supportive housing and affordable housing. This proposal was developed to address affordable housing aspect only, and is in line with the recommendations from the strategy that stated the city focus on development projects through partnerships. Partnerships alleviate the city being in direct competition with the private sector. In the issues category, the issues were pulled directly from the city's 3 reports on this topic, and the highlights of those reports identified that in 2016, 11% of all households in Grande Prairie fell into the core housing need, and this equates to 2,475 households, and is estimated in the report to be at 3,000 by 2030. So this is a 1.4% annual increase, and with this 1.4 increase, the city would have to add 35 units per year to meet the annual increase in needed housing. The Chamber has documented the difficulties of the city addressing the problem on its own, and would like to highlight areas to consider. So first, the capital cost to construct facilities. The well-documented case studies that identified negative social impacts of locating large numbers of low-cost housing units within the same building area. The additional costs beyond construction, utilities, maintenance, administration, and periodic renovations. And finally, the fact that government-owned projects do not pay property taxes. All of these items affect the long-term sustainability of the program and property ownership by the city. In the details section, the proposal offers a P3 model to help address the affordable housing issue in Grande Prairie. General concept is to offer financial incentives for developers of housing projects to partner with the city of Grande Prairie in working towards a solution. It's important to note that the proposal applies to new construction as well as existing building complexes that may have immediate access to housing units, thus addressing the issue in the short term as well as the long-term strategy. The basis of the model is twofold. One is the initial contribution by the city to secure housing units, and 2, a long-term lease at a considerably discounted rate from market value rent. And the details of each are documented in the report. And we welcome questions at the end if there are any. The financial analysis was completed to identify costs to the city, maximum potential revenue, and overall rate of return to the city. And we welcome questions on this analysis on the conclusion of the report. In closing, although significant capital is required to address core housing needs in the city, it is important to note that there is socioeconomic costs, household debt, labor force attraction, degrading properties, crime, etc., if this issue is not addressed. The summary of the social benefits to this type of program includes better geographic distribution of housing, blended model provides dignity for those in need of affordable housing, allows the city to focus on higher level strategies. Provincial and federal grants can be directed to the more immediate acute need for supportive housing, and requests for land and fee waivers can go directly towards the city's investment contribution. The model presented in this proposal offers a solution that is easy to implement and not only addresses affordable housing needs, but includes an incentive for developers to construct additional market value housing units to temper future inflation and contribute to the city's tax base for municipal services. In addition, this proposal demonstrates a P3 model that is scalable, transferable to other regions, and sustainable in the long term while leveraging partnerships and reducing risks for the municipalities. And now I'll welcome my colleague, Dan, to speak on his consultation efforts and some of the discussions and ideas that came back from the development world, specifically EDI and the home builders area.
Thank you, Larry. So just want to say hello to the members on the committee and council and staff. My perspective from the development world comes from a lot of consultation in the past year, both professionally and through the development of this proposal. So in the past year, we've had at my office specifically several developers come to us looking to get into affordable housing because there are a lot of federal grants that are available. CMHC has some programs which they find have been very difficult to apply for. The eligibility requirements are fairly strict, and the ability to qualify for those programs sometimes takes more than one round of application. So to date, there's been very little uptake on those programs. The other problem with those programs is the Municipal Government Act now allows affordable housing units if they're managed by either a municipality or a not-for-profit society to be tax exempt. So they can apply, and then the problem that is that the city, in terms of sustainability, has a hard time with offering services to residents that live in a city when they're not collecting those property taxes. So to try to pull this all together, we've had developer interest. There's really two criteria that they've been looking at. Either 80% of the units in the complex have to be below 10% market value to qualify as affordable housing, or it has to be a project that the municipality approves. So that can supersede the requirement for the 80% of units. And as we stated earlier, as Larry stated earlier, having 80% of your units or just a large portion of that in one complex just isn't a good idea. There's several case studies around. We've consulted with the Grande Prairie Foundation, and they agree that it's not a good idea to put that many units in one location. The other thing that we wanted to talk about was the fact that Build GP, I've talked to several members on their board. They are supportive, but they're going through the proposal as a group, so they don't have a final formal answer for us yet in terms of whether or not they support something like this. But the general concept of it being a situation where they don't have to compete with the city to build these units is definitely supported. We personally have several developers that are interested in going forward with something like this with fairly large developments. And I think that one of the biggest issues that you're going to find is if you have a first intake period, you're probably going to see a lot of interest from different groups. And part of the caveat you'll have to put on this proposal is that they can't apply for that tax exempt status because it throws all the numbers off. The whole reason why the numbers work is that the city gets to claim those taxes as revenue, and there's a differential that's been set into the numbers where the developer will discount their overall profit margin for the affordable housing initiative. So they have to give up at least 10% over a long-term period, 10 or 20 years. But in general, we've had really good response from developers on something like this, and they are looking for a situation where it can incentivize them to build now, and it can create kind of a win-win scenario for the city at the same time.
And we welcome any questions.
Okay, thanks for the presentation, guys. Any questions from committee? Mayor Given?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair Plott. So for the presenters, in the concept that you're presenting, how much money does it take from the city to initially kick it off? I see sort of in the graphic there that it's a $10 million upfront investment. Is this flexible, or is there sort of a starting point? The reason that I ask the question is, if this was something that council wanted to consider, we would need to have some sort of budget number to consider at budget time. So is there a specific amount that it needs to start at, or is this sort of for illustration purposes only?
Yeah, I believe those are for illustration purposes only. I'm going to do defer that question to Dan, who did the financial analysis on that. But I believe they were just for illustration, and I think it would be up to the city to decide the need and then how much they would like to invest to address the needs of the affordable housing concerns.
Yes, thanks, Larry. Thank you, Mayor Given, for the question. Absolutely, that was just a projection to show the comparative between what this P3 affordable housing program would look like with a $10 million investment versus what city-owned projects or developer-built with tax exemptions would compare with. And the comparison shows that the city would be ahead financially if it were to utilize a program like this. But the recommendation isn't saying that you need to invest all $10 million right away. I think it's probably prudent and smarter move to stagger it so that you don't have all your housing units coming on stream at once, and probably look at a number closer to about $3 to $4 million to start with.
Thanks for that. Okay. Any other questions? Councillor O'Toole?
Yeah, Mr. Wong, I was just wondering, the developers that have approached you, are they looking for multi-unit apartments, or are they looking for sort of 8-plex to 12-plex, or what were they looking to build?
Both of those. So we talked to at least 2 developers that were looking at larger apartment complexes, so in that range of 100 units. And we've also talked to developers that were looking at some kind of townhouse concept where the full development would be in that 24 to 48 unit range.
Yep, thank you very much.
Councillor Thiessen?
Yeah, just thank you very much, Chair Palat, and thank you very much, members of the Chamber. Just in regards to the basis of the model that's up near the top of your proposal, there are a couple things that I do have a bit of concern with, and perhaps that's something for city or council and administration to discuss. But over the years, the average home price of a leaseholder, and that's ranging from bachelor apartments to 3 bedrooms, in 2010 was $954. As of today, it's now $1,150. Now, at the same time, the number of the amount of income ACE recipients have gotten has actually decreased 3% over the last 2 years. It has had marginal increases, but not enough for that, and still that covers about 60% of their basis if they're covering a family of 3, for instance. So part of the things that concern me a little bit in this, and this is something that council may have to talk over, or maybe you could talk to, is that in agreement of a P3, it says that we can lease property at any rate we chooses, but the rent must be a minimum of 10% below market value to qualify as affordable housing. Now, me who used to work in housing and for Canadian Mental Health, I can tell you a lot of social workers and a lot of people who are housing people don't agree with that definition as pertained by CMHC, that it just doesn't go far enough, especially with inflation rates and stuff. And also that the city will be responsible for all damage deposits, in-suite maintenance, and collection of payment as if they were the owner of said property. So that puts the city at significant risk, I guess, for spending more than maybe the chamber suggesting that we would otherwise allocate for projects such as this. So we'd have the upfront costs that you said was, in the $3 to $5 million range potentially. But it could actually grow higher than that if there's damages to it or otherwise. Can you guys speak to this point D on number 2 as far as a long-term lease in a P3 market value system?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Thiessen. So the answer to your first question about being or setting the rents at 10% below market value, that was just to show the maximum potential revenue that the city could take in. Of course, we would expect that the city would have administrative costs on top of that, or that they may choose to rent out at lower than 10%. And that could be possible through no-cost capital. This was shown in a situation where the city took investment dollars and put it towards something like this, and and it showed a return on investment on new construction of 11.5 years, or 73% rate of return. If there was no cost capital from the federal government or provincial government, those numbers would look a lot better, and the city or the city could use it to further subsidize the rents. In terms of the city taking in damage deposits, etc., that was just to illustrate that you could overcome that barrier of people that don't have the money for damage deposits. It's not saying that you have to do that, but it is more consistent with the comparable that the city was owning the property. If in that case, the city would have to do the damage deposits and managing rents and things like that anyway. That could all be managed through a housing management body such as the Grande Prairie Foundation or another not-for-profit that the city could employ.
Okay, thanks for those answers. I kind of thought you were going to go that way, Dan, but thanks for answering that.
Thanks for that, Councillor Thiessen. I'm just kind of I'm struggling with number 2E as well, with the city being responsible for damage deposits. I guess in this proposal, who do you see placing the tenant? I'm just curious how you see that relationship happening.
So the number one, I think the tenant administration needs to be done by the city or in partnership with the city. I think the Grande Prairie Foundation is the one that is holding that wait list of people that need affordable housing in the city. So whether the city gets a copy of that or not, I'm not sure. But someone needs to address those people that are in core need. So they have the immediate list, which in 2016 was 683. I understand today that number is closer to about 450. And then in terms of the overall long-term number, which is 11% of all households, that's 2,475. I don't know that the city needs to look at that immediately. I think what you do is you roll out a program like this, address those people on the immediate list, and then see what happens to the rest of the market. Because the discussion that I've had with developers and even with some building owners is that the market will adjust after you get a bunch of new properties online. And some of those older ones that are able to charge larger rents right now, and almost unjustifiably charge those larger rents, they will adjust down and make everything more affordable. So it'll be very fluid. Not sure that I addressed that question.
Yeah, and I guess for me, do we have any idea of what we think the potential cost would be for us to look after these damages and everything else in the suites? I mean, we're talking about a capital project, but this is going to have could have the potential to have a fairly significant ongoing costs. And just trying to think of a building owner, so I don't get to place my tenant, and basically the Grande Prairie or whoever runs my suites for me. What happens if there's damage in the common areas from those tenants now? Like, I appreciate the intent of this. I'm just really trying to get my head around how this actually would have a landlord want to jump up and do this if there's damages in his suites. He's not even having a relationship specifically with his tenant, can't even place his tenants. And if there's extra damage created by these tenants, I'm just having a hard time getting my head around how a landlord would want to enter into this sort of an agreement. And I don't even know if it's legally allowed to enter into a third-party agreement when you own a property. So I'm just a little bit confused on this one, I guess, guys, and maybe I need to do more research. I just think this sets the city up for a lot of potential liability. And I'm not sure if it's going to get landlords to run up and jump up when they don't have control of their tenants. Just something that concerns me, guys. So just, is that something that could be, is that something that you guys see as a model that could be worked with? I know you keep coming back to Grande Prairie, but I'm just really curious on how that relationship's going to work. And I don't know if you can speak any more to it, or I can just leave it at that. But
if I could provide a better answer to that then. A lot of those sub-points was my attempt to try to cover off all the points that might come up for discussion, but in doing that, I did sometimes overcomplicate things. That's definitely a point that could be stripped out of this proposal. This is definitely, we're asking for support on the general concept, not necessarily on all the points, but the city, in terms of doing its due diligence, would have to go through legal and finance to address a lot of concerns. We believe that the landlord Landlord and Tenants Act already addresses a lot of situations with sublet. And this is essentially what this is. This is the city being the lessee, or sorry, the lessor, and then, both the lessee and the lessor. But the Landlord and Tenants Act probably already has provisions for that. And then everything else can be addressed as a detail or an operational component within the agreement itself between the city and the building owner.
Any other questions for council? Okay. Thanks for the presentation, guys, and Tanya, and answering the questions as best you could. I know they're not easy ones, so with no further questions, I guess I'd be looking for a motion. Mayor Given?
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I appreciate the work that went into the concept and the presentation. And well, we had lots of questions. Administration probably has many as well, and would like to probably review this in detail. So I'm going to make a motion that we refer the presentation from the Chamber of Commerce on an affordable housing concept to administration for a report back to the appropriate standing committee. In making that, this is, the start of a conversation. Really appreciate the private sector bringing forward potential solutions to a challenging social issue and affordability. I think it speaks really highly of Grande Prairie and the innovative nature of the organizations we have here when it's the Chamber of Commerce coming forward and proposing a concept for affordable housing. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that happens in other communities. I'd be really surprised whether, in any other mid-sized city, you see a Chamber of Commerce coming forward and proposing something like this. So I want to give my thanks to the Chamber for their support in this and many other things, obviously. But start of a conversation, and so let's get the proposal to administration so they can maybe answer some of those more technical questions that council had about if the city was going to do something like this, how could we do it? So that's my motion.
Thanks for the motion, Mayor Given. Well said. 100% agree with you. I think it's a great spot to start the conversation. Councillor Bressy, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just think my only concern or caution for committee with that is council on board with this concept of actually investing money in a process like this, and are we interested in doing it through a P3 model? I know I am. I don't know if council's there, and I'm worried about asking administration to go and do work when we haven't really told them where we're at with this. And I don't know if it's one thing to ask administration to make recommendations, to give us context on the technical matters. I don't really think administration should be coming in and answering the philosophical question of should we be investing money in a model like this. So I wonder if council has more work to do before we task administration with doing this.
So just recognize Mayor Given had his hand up, and also Director Manuel.
Yeah. Just speak to the intent of my motion. I'm asking administration to review this, and it's still up to council to decide whether or not we would like to enter into something like this. So absolutely. Personally, I would probably be an advocate for that, but that is a decision point down the road. At this stage, this is the first time that we've been presented with this information. There's a bunch of data in there. There's underlying assumptions and everything else. I'd like administration to come back and give us a bit of a view of, hey, we've reviewed this with our entire team, and here's what we think about it in terms of its assumptions and its outcomes that it suggests can be achieved. And then council can decide whether or not that's a path we'd like to go down. But I have a lot of trust in the Chamber of Commerce, and certainly in Dan, having worked with him on council before. I know he knows the types of things that we need to do. And I also know that he would fully expect us to check this with, we've got a lot of professionals, a lot of different areas. I'd like their advice on what this actually, whether it makes sense, whether it's technically feasible, all those other sort of things. And then that's the point where council would get in the question, okay, so it could work. It could work with these changes. Do we want to do that? I'm not necessarily advocating today that we do, but we do need to get our pros sort of on the ball and having a look at the details.
Okay, thanks for that, Mayor Given. I'm just going to come to Councillor O'Toole in a minute. I'm just going to go to Director Manuel first because he did have a comment on this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Platt. I want to kudo Mayor Given for giving compliments to the Chamber of Commerce. Obviously, they're made up of business owners and different companies, and obviously the companies have contacted the Chamber and they have some concerns. So thank you to the Chamber for bringing this to City Council to at least acknowledge And once again, I think that Mayor Gibbons got something there. We're going to probably send it to administration, which it sounds like we are. And we probably got some questions and digest that information. And it'll all be good information. I can guarantee you that, because it's important. And just see what the actual needs are in the community and what types of processes we can go through to accomplish housing these people. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor O'Toole. Director Manuel, did you still want to get in the queue here?
Just quickly, I just wanted to just comment to Councillor Bressie that I don't see this as leading us astray at all. Administration had identified this as a core strategy that we were looking at as far as affordable housing goes. So I think it is just an evolution of that, and we're comfortable bringing it forward.
I guess for me, I'll speak and I'm going to support the motion. I think this is a good exercise. I appreciate the Chamber's done a lot of legwork here, but I think it's just good diligence on our part to make sure the spreadsheets actually, the math works like they says it works and everything else internally, and for the city to take a position on how this could look from us. So I think it's a great starting point. I really appreciate the Chamber giving us something to have for administration to start with, but I think it's a great starting point. I think administration can look at that and they can double check it and come back to us with reports. So Councillor Bressie, you want to comment?
Yeah, and I guess just where I'm at is I'm conscious of we've probably got 6 or 7 months to get something started if we really want to get something done, and then things are probably stalled for about a year, because I don't think we're gonna do anything significant in the last 6 months of our term, and with new councillors coming on board, depending on who's there, it might be hard to get something going in the first 6 months of that term. And so I guess my biggest concern with this proposal is I wonder if there's some work council should be doing simultaneously, maybe alongside administration, to figure out where are we at with our values, our appetite for investing in this. I'm just worried that if we wait, I don't know how long a report will take, but I'm worried that if we wait for a report to come forward on this particular model before we talk about some of those bigger picture things in this, there's the idea of, yes, we're open to investing, we're open to working with private industry to invest money in developing affordable housing is a different question in many ways than how are we going to channel that money. And I worry if we wait, what does this model look like for us to have those bigger philosophical questions that we just don't get it done and this gets stalled for the next year and a half is, I think, more what my worry is. So maybe I'm the only one that has that worry, but that's how I'm feeling on this.
Fair comment. Any other conversation on the motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? And that passes unanimously with the 4 of us in chambers here. So thank you for that. And yes, hopefully Councillor Bressie will see a report back sooner or later on that, but that will be administration's timelines to work with. From there, we'll move on to item 2.2, the commitment to inclusion. And I'll ask for Miss Angela Sutherland if she can do the report, please.
Sorry, Councillor Palat. We missed the Director Service Area update.
My bad. I jumped around there, you're right. Thanks, Angela. So, Director Manuel.
I got the hint there, so I'll be brief. The Community Social Development, we just wanted to report that Council is going to see the candidates for the Youth Advisory Council coming forward on November 2nd. So that's exciting, moving that initiative forward. Taxi inspections are underway over at Enforcement Services and should be completed this week. So this is the annual inspections for our vehicles for hire. The Grande Prairie Regional Emergency Management Committee met this on October 6th and passed the 2021 budget. In the fire department, their computer-aided dispatch upgrade, which is bringing us closer to next generation 911, is progressing well. We are now starting to work on phase 2, which is mobile data terminals in emergency vehicles. So that's basically having connectivity in the fire trucks that will be on scene. So that's positive. In the RCMP, they're reporting that they've received 2 experienced members transferred into the detachment on October 8th, with a 3rd experienced member expected October 10th. So that's pretty rare news that we get 3 seasoned police officers as opposed to new recruits, so that's positive. And other news, the St. Lawrence Center is now operating out of our main floor of the Street Outreach Center, and they did their soft opening last week, and we look forward to seeing that facility utilized well. And the mobile outreach program is in their 3rd week of operations, and reporting that that project is going very well. And initial results have been very promising at connecting with clients, businesses, and helping divert calls from our CMP and enforcement services.
Okay. Thanks for that, Director Manuel. Any questions? Yep. Mayor Given?
Dr. Manuel, appreciate hearing about the opening of the day shelter space. Council hasn't had a chance to see that, so I don't know if administration was working with St. Lawrence Center to create an opportunity for council to get by and see it. I'm certainly excited to see how the renovation turned out and how the space is laid out.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were planning a larger grand opening later on in the next few weeks once we worked a couple of the kinks out. We were hoping to do that in conjunction with Rotary, who is a primary funder of that facility.
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks for that, Mayor Given. Any other questions? All right, thanks, Director Mel. Sorry, I almost forgot you there, but thanks for filling us in with that. So we will move on to item 2.2, the commitment to inclusion, and Ms. Angela Sutherland again.
Okay, well, good afternoon. Yes, I get the fortunate experience of being the last but not least, I hope. So this report is in response to the motion that was presented at the September 15th Protection and Social Services Committee meeting around directing us to come back with some recommendations and opportunities for the City of Grande Prairie to renew its commitment to inclusion and the elimination of racism. So the City of Grande Prairie has had a long commitment of addressing discrimination and racism. One of the big events in the past have been in 2006. We signed on to be a signatory in the Canadian Coalition of Municipalities Against Racism. And as a part of this commitment, the city was awarded an AUMA grant in 2019 that helps support municipalities to address inclusiveness and develop some strategies and actions on becoming more inclusive. And as you know, globally and locally, there has been a huge push around addressing racism and discrimination. And the City of Grande Prairie as a municipality has a really important role in addressing racism, discrimination, and fostering equality and respect for all of our residents. Commitment to inclusion can reduce social conflict, increase participation of our diverse groups in local decision-making, increase business innovation, and civic engagement. So at this time to advance the City of Grande Prairie's commitment, administration would like to recommend committee endorse the following activities. Number one is to create an annual diversity inclusion report card to be shared with council and the community to provide a mechanism for accountability, transparency, success stories. The City of Grande Prairie has been doing amazing work around inclusion. I think it's oftentimes we don't share success stories and also opportunities for the community to know what we are doing and where we can improve and identify opportunities. Number two is to conduct a municipal review or review of policies and practices through an equity, diversity, and inclusion lens. So when we're talking about equity, diversity, inclusion, that is identifying that unique needs of diverse groups are considered, and it also helps us identify any barriers or access to achieving outcomes. Number three is implementing relevant training for council and staff to better understand the obligations and importance of EDI work. Number four is to engage and consult with the community to identify systemic barriers to addressing city programs and services. And last but not least is continue to leverage opportunities to continually collaborate with our community partners and stakeholders on actions to address systemic racism and discrimination. In terms of stakeholder engagement, administration will move forward on creating an internal equity, diversity, inclusion team that oversees our action plan and evaluates ongoing initiatives. This team would include people from a variety of backgrounds and lived experience. And continue to build this culture of inclusion really requires appropriate commitment and engagement across the organization. And as usual, externally, administration will continue to work and leverage partnerships and consultations with our local immigration partnership, our Indigenous community, and other stakeholders to address racism and discrimination. As mentioned, the AUMA, as a part of the Municipal Inclusion Grant, we have access to up to $50,000 based on our action plan. And administration is confident that this action plan can be delivered within this allocated budget. I also would like to highlight that in order to be successful in this action plan, it requires quite a few components. We need leadership support, so that includes buy-in from city leadership on encouraging the importance of the value of this work. We also need organizational culture. So that means we need to create an environment where inclusion is something that we do, and it is not another project that is a check mark. Accountability is very important too, which involves measurement, key performance indicators, and building on reporting on what we have done and what we're continuing to do to achieve our outcomes. And of course, we need technical capacity. We want to ensure that if we're implementing relevant training, that we have the knowledge and training that's required to effectively lead that. So that involves looking at best practices, what is happening, and what is the recommendations around what kind of training other municipalities are doing to help us really advance this work and stay true to our commitments. To conclude, I think that governments across the country are prioritizing these types of philosophies. Equity, diversity, and inclusion work is strongly encouraged in not only the Government of Canada, but also the Government of Alberta. I think that the vision is around being an inclusive organization and really be that leader of change, and creating a society where all of our residents feel that the work that we do internally and externally are allowing that everyone to fully participate in all aspects of political, social, and economic life. So I appreciate any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Angela. Any questions from council or committee here? Okay, no, seeing done, good report apparently. Everybody's content with it. So seeing done, I guess I would entertain a motion, please.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, this is for discussion with the committee. I think I appreciate the recommendation is to endorse the actions that are there. Some of them are actually directing staff resources, and so I wonder if we should be a little bit more specific about what actions we're endorsing and how we're expecting them to happen. For me, the first two were ones that I think council, there may be different, I think on number one, the recommendation number one, create an annual diversity inclusion report. I think that's something that would be worthy of, committee recommend council approve creation of. And then it's actually council explicitly saying, hey, City Council has said that on an annual basis we want to have this report come to us. I think that that's a reasonable thing to do that's specific and identifies that council is okay with that, acknowledging that there's some resources that would be required to do that. The second one, point number two, conduct a review of municipal policies and practices through an equity, diversity, and inclusion lens. That really brought to mind our bylaw and policy review policy that we had just approved a little while ago. And I wondered if maybe we should be asking administration to make a recommendation of how we could amend that policy to incorporate this idea. So, if we already have a process set out to review bylaws and policies throughout the course of a council term. And rather than setting up a one-time task of going through and reviewing all of our bylaws and policies and everything with this equity, diversity, and inclusion lens, maybe what we should do is actually incorporate that lens into our bylaw review policy, bylaw and policy review policy. I just like saying that. But so my point here is to say that yes, we should absolutely do that. And I don't think it should be a one-time thing. I think we should incorporate it into our policy that governs how we review policies and bylaws. So on those two in particular, I have motions that are slightly different that I'd like to try. So I'll do the first one first. I'd move that the committee recommend council approve the creation of an annual diversity inclusion report to be shared with council and the community to provide a mechanism for accountability, transparency, and success stories. Period. So that's the first motion, then I'll deal with the second one, and then we can talk about the others.
Okay, Councillor Bressie.
Great, thank you. Just a question on this report. Is it only gonna look at it from a lens of racism and of the elimination of racism and inclusion on ethnic religious basis, or is it also gonna, if this passed as is, would it also consider people of different cognitive and physical abilities and how we're being inclusive of them?
Through the chair, a very good question, Councillor Bressie. And yes, it would include one of the aspects is, of course, elimination of racism and putting the city stance on that. But when we're talking about diversity, inclusion, and equity, it is around all the different layers of diversity, which include not only race, ethnicity, and gender, but also things like socioeconomics. We're talking about disabilities. We're also talking about sexual orientation, religious beliefs, etc. So yes, all inclusive.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Ms. Heslin. Just want to make a note that Councillor Thiessen apologized, but he had to step out. He has a 1 o'clock, so he wanted to be part of the conversation, but he had to leave. Any other comments on the motion that's currently out? Councillor O'Toole?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly support this. I was looking at this and it looks like it may have been a cut and paste as the organization, but we're kind of a unique community up here, and I think it needs to be gone through a process, which Mayor Given had made the motions on the first one, and it looks like he's got a second one, and I wholeheartedly agree with both of those.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor O'Toole, as well. So I guess we'll call the first one all in favor. And that passes unanimously here. Mayor Given, did you have another one you want to keep going?
Sure, yeah, so on the recommendation number 2, so I would move the committee direct administration provide appropriate amendments to Council Policy 124 to enable regular review of city bylaws and policies through an equity, diversity, and inclusion lens, period. So this is a motion asking administration, which would probably be in the clerk's area, to come back and advise how we can amend that policy 124, just to build this in there so it's a regular part of business rather than a one-time thing or a big massive project. Just an additional lens that when we're reviewing things that we ensure that we take the time to think about that.
Thanks for that, Mayor Given. Any conversation on that one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Again, that passes unanimously here in Chambers. And Mayor Given, did you want to keep going on this?
Yeah, well, so for the others, I think that the items 3 to 4 are really about how, I mean, certainly when they say continuing to do things, well, I don't know that we need a council motion to continue to do something that we're already doing. I think engaging and consulting with the community or something, they talk about the way that we do business. And so for all of those, I'd move we endorse recommendations 3 to 5 as presented.
Good one. Any conversation on that? Councillor Friesen?
Thank you, Chair Palat. I just have a question about perhaps even broadening sort of number 4 or adding an additional recommendation. While it is important, and I'm wholeheartedly in favor of engaging and consulting with the community to identify systemic barriers to accessing city programs and services, I do wonder also about an internal engagement and consultation with city staff to understand systemic barriers within employment, either accessing employment at the city or moving through one's career within the city as an employer.
Comment on that, Director Manuel? Did you have a?
Certainly. So the city, I suppose initially we're looking at this probably falling under number 2, but outside of just council's policies, we have our internal processes as well, which we're internally reviewing, and we are working with a program through the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association and grant funding to do that very sort of work.
Good comment, though, Councillor Friesen. Any other comments on Mayor Given's motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries unanimously as well. Okay, so thanks for that. Thanks for the report, Ms. Sutherland. I appreciate that. And from there, we will move on to our outstanding items list and back to Director Manuel, please.
Okay, so with that report, I recommend that we remove item 1112, commitment to inclusion, from the outstanding items list, and the other items remain on track.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor O'Toole.
And if there's no other, I will make a motion to approve the outstanding items list as amended.
Thank you for that. So I'll call the question. All in favor? And that again passes unanimously here in Chambers. So and with that, we will close the Protective and Social Services Committee meeting. Thanks for attending, everybody.